Bienvenue Simplici pour une autre session qui consiste aujourd'hui. Aujourd'hui, c'est une session qui est aujourd'hui, c'est la troisième session en 12e Parlement avec on a discuté plusieurs différentes motions, mais avant de discuter ces motions, je me dis bienvenue pour collègue Virgil Leonti qui est ici avec nous. Virgil, bienvenue.
Good morning to all. And you're welcome this morning to a live broadcast of the third session of the 12th Parliament of St. Lucia, the meeting of the lower house, where there are few papers to be laid. There are 3 motions to be tabled and 2 bills to be read out. As we speak now, the chambers is filling up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we are expecting to go live shortly. But Michael, the papers to be laid concern statutory instruments relating to travel, finances, crime. We have 3 motions, as I mentioned earlier. One relating to the transfer of funds, and maybe you could tell the people in Creole the transfer of funds. The Minister of Finance is seeking permission to transfer more.
All right. Ok, speaker j'ai entré avec nous qui avons commencé la session à présent. Ok.
Let us pray.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Almighty God, by whom alone kings reign, and princes decree justice, and from whom alone cometh all counsel, wisdom, and understanding, we thy unworthy servants here gathered together in thy name, do most humbly beseech thee to send down thy heavenly wisdom from above, to direct and guide us in all our consultations, and grant that we, having thy fear always before our eyes, and laying aside all private interests, prejudice, and partial affection, the result of all our counsel may be to thy glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of thy King, the public weal, peace, and tranquility of St. Lucia, and the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity, one towards another. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. And the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, and the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Ghost be with us all forevermore. Amen.
Good morning, honorable members. I beg to announce that His Excellency, the Acting Governor General, has been pleased to assent the following bills: Proceeds of Crime Amendment, United Nations Sanctions Counter Proliferation Financing Amendment, Income Tax Amendment. I am in receipt of correspondence from the member for Castries South, who will not be with us today. I'm also in receipt of correspondence from the member for Miku South and leader of the opposition, advising of his unavailability for today's sitting. The members for Labrie and Miku North have assured me they are on their way here and will be with us shortly. I ask that you join me in wishing belated birthday greetings to the member for Castries Central who celebrated on Sunday. Also join me in congratulating our colleague from the other place, Senator Angelina Ferrapolius, who last week was awarded a PhD after a successful defense of a dissertation. Members, I am to report that 2 weeks ago, I attended the 45th annual conference of the Caribbean, Americas, and Atlantic region of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association in the Turks and Caicos, at the conclusion of which I was announced as the region's candidate to the position of Vice Chairman of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association at its next annual general meeting. This is, of course, the second highest position of the international body. Members, in addition to the support of the Caribbean, the Americas, and the Atlantic, I have also secured in writing the support of the entire African continent, which should be more than sufficient to put me over the line. There is just a simple issue to be resolved at the regional level, and once this is resolved, we should well be on our way. Statement from ministers. Papers to be laid. Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, Economic Development, Youth Economy, Justice and National Security.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers standing in my name. Starting instrument number 75 of 2023, travel tax exemption order. Starting instrument number 76 of 2023, fiscal incentives, Red Wolf Inc. order. Starting instrument number 77 of 2023, suppression of escalated crime, police powers, designation of Beaufort South as an escalated crime area, number 3, order. Starting instrument number 80 of 2023, excise tax amendment of Schedule 1, number 10, order. Starting instrument number 82 of 2023, excise tax amendment Schedule 1, number 11, order. Starting instrument number 83 of 2023, value-added tax, resolution of Parliament to approve the draft value-added tax alteration of rate of interest order. Starting instrument number 84 of 2023, value-added tax, resolution of Parliament to approve draft value-added tax amendment of Schedules 1 and 3 order.
Member for Denry North will stand in for the Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers standing in the name of the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Tourism, Investment, Creative Industries, Culture and Information. Statutory Instrument number 78 of 2023, Tourism Incentives, Cutting Edge Tech Incorporated order. Statutory Instrument number 79 of 2023, Tourism Stimulus and Investment, Sol Sanctum Limited, amendment order.
Minister for Commerce, Manufacturing, Business Development, Cooperatives and Consumer Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to lay the following paper appearing in my name. Statutory Instrument number 81 of 2023. Price Control Amendment number 10 order.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the following motion standing in my name. Whereas it's provided under Section 16 of the Public Finance Management Act, Cap 15.0 on the Act, that the Minister of Finance may, by an affirmative resolution of Parliament, transfer from the consolidated fund a prescribed sum as may be required for the operation of the contingencies fund. And whereas it is further provided under Section 19(1) of the Act that the Minister of Finance may, in the case of an urgent or unforeseen need for expenditure by a contingencies fund warrant, in anticipation of the grant of an appropriation by Parliament, authorize an advance in the contingency fund where no monies have been appropriated or for which the sum appropriated is insufficient. Funds cannot be reallocated as provided for under Section 43. Public monies cannot be deferred without serious detriment to the public service. And whereas the Minister of Finance considers it necessary to transfer from the consolidated fund to the contingency fund the amount of EC 5.4 million to A, support the recovery efforts of the Department of Education, Sustainable Development, Innovation, Science, Technology and Vocational Training due to the passage and damage caused by Tropical Storm Brett, and B, cater for further emergencies. Be it resolved that Parliament authorizes the Minister of Finance to transfer from the consolidated fund to the contingency fund the amount of EC 5.4 million to support the recovery efforts of the Department of Education, Sustainable Development, Innovation, Science, Technology and Vocational Training due to the passage and damage caused by Tropical Storm Brett, and B, cater for further emergencies. Mr. Speaker, this resolution is a creature of the new Public Finance Management Act, which states that monies to go into the contingency fund for unforeseen circumstances have to be voted from Parliament from the consolidated fund. Mr. Speaker, as you know, the passage of Hurricane Brett caused damage to some schools and educational establishments in the country. It was considered necessary because of the urgency of the need to repair these buildings, these school buildings, that the Cabinet and the Ministry of Education thought it necessary to get money from the contingency fund to transfer money from the consolidated fund into the contingency fund, because what was in the contingency fund was not adequate. It was estimated, Mr. Speaker, that we needed some $2 million to effect these immediate repairs, particularly in the south of the country, where there were schools in Vieux-Fort that got badly damaged. So we thought it necessary that we had, apart from the normal sums of money that's usually being used during this time of year to repair schools generally in the country, we needed that extra sum to repair particularly the roofs of these schools. So we needed to transfer $5.4 million from the consolidated fund into the contingency fund to effect these repairs, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and that comes in line with the educational support that we have given to schools this year. And every member of Parliament got an allowance so could help in the education to buy education supplies for students going to the constituency. And I stress every member of Parliament, Mr. Speaker, every member of Parliament. Every member of Parliament, Mr. Speaker, got an allowance for his school, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, talking about Hurricane Brett, you may know that the government also made available $2 million in income support for the farmers of this country to help in the damages caused by Hurricane Brett, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, so this is a simple resolution to ensure that we follow the dictates and the rules of the Finance Management Act, and we want to start work on these buildings in Vieux-Fort at the earliest possible opportunity, possibly before the end of this week, Mr. Speaker. We will begin repairs to these schools so that hopefully the children can get to school in September when the school terms begins. The Speaker asks members to support this resolution. I thank you.
Honourable members, the question is that Parliament authorizes the Minister for Finance to transfer from the Consolidated Fund to the Contingency Fund the amount of $5,400,000 to A, support the recovery efforts of the Department of Education, Sustainable Development, Innovation, Science, Technology and Vocational Training due to the passage and damage caused by Tropical Brett, and B, to cater for future emergencies. Member for Dennery North. It's not coming on? Or the podium?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the motion to transfer $5.4 million from the Consolidated Fund to treat with some of the issues that we have to contend with in the wake of Tropical Storm Brett. But, Mr. Speaker, before I speak on the motion, I crave your indulgence and that of members in the House this morning to express condolences to a number of families in Dennery North who have suffered the loss of loved ones in recent times. The family of Bulut, the family of Tokman, the family of a very personal and dear friend, Mr. Speaker, Nikki of Belmont, the family of Stered, the family of Caius from Austin Hill, the family of Anthony, and of course Miss Mildrina in Grand Ravine, who has had to deal with some deaths in her family. And there's so many other families, Mr. Speaker, and the names do not all come to me at this point in time. But I really want to express my condolences to those families and the collective condolences of the entire constituency of Dennery North to the families that are grieving. Mr. Speaker, it is also opportune for me to express congratulations to the Constituency Council of Dennery North and the Carnival Committee for pulling off a very successful 2023 Valley Carnival. Mr. Speaker, they did that against the odds. They were put to the sword, Mr. Speaker. They were attacked on social media, Mr. Speaker. And there were some forces at play that did everything conceivable to try and derail the efforts of the Carnival Committee and by extension the Constituency Council. But at the end, Mr. Speaker, they prevailed, and I think they all should take a bow for having staged a very successful Valley Carnival. Mr. Speaker, moving forward, it is my sincere hope that all of the acrimony, the discord, and the disagreements that preceded Valley Carnival can be ironed out, and that next year, Mr. Speaker, all the stakeholders, irrespective of their political affiliation, can come together for this one activity and portray our community in the light that it is meant to be portrayed. So, notwithstanding the fact that the Carnival Committee was able to pull it off, I believe Valley Carnival can be stronger and even better when all stakeholders, irrespective of their differences, can come together and to make it happen. And this is what I'm hoping will, Mr. Speaker, characterize Valley Carnival or Valley Mass 2024. Mr. Speaker, I also want to place on the record or to congratulate the newly appointed Chief Education Officer who's here in the chamber with us, Ms. Beverly Diodoni, Mr. Speaker. Hers is a very serious task, and given the motion that is before the House, Mr. Speaker, I thought it was necessary to have senior management personnel of the Ministry of Education in the chamber to absorb the debate and to have a greater appreciation for what the Prime Minister is doing this morning by allocating monies to help us meet some of the challenges we have in schools. Mr. Speaker, I must place on the record my sincerest expressions of congratulations to Senator Angelina Ferrer-Polius of Dennery North, Mr. Speaker, on the attainment of her doctorate. Dr. Polius's achievement should serve as an inspiration for all young people of Dennery North, Mr. Speaker, that irrespective of what your circumstances would have been growing up, if you have the determination to succeed, Mr. Speaker, you can scale some heights in academia that at times can appear to be insurmountable. And so today, notwithstanding that she is a political adversary, Mr. Speaker, I want to place on the record my congratulations to her. And as I said, I'm hoping that her achievement, her academic achievement, will serve as a source of inspiration for many young persons in the Valley who are aspiring to achieve the same. Mr. Speaker, that having been said, Mr. Speaker, I will remain very vigilant as the parliamentary rep and as the chief custodian of the Labour Party's interest in Dennery North. Mr. Speaker, on the 22nd of June this year, Tropical Storm Brett slammed into St. Lucia with maximum sustained winds of 65 miles an hour or 100 kilometers per hour. As has become customary, Mr. Speaker, with such weather events, it inflicted damage on key sectors of our economy. Agriculture was dealt a blow, health infrastructure was impacted, and Mr. Speaker, significantly, a number of schools were damaged in the wake of Tropical Storm Brett. And Mr. Speaker, ours is a government that has placed a premium on education. And we believe that at every opportunity, we must give the children of St. Lucia the most comfortable of environments within which their learning must be facilitated. And it is against that backdrop, Mr. Speaker, that we are here this morning moving diligently to transfer monies from the consolidated funds to repair the schools that were damaged. Mr. Speaker, approximately 22 schools were impacted by Tropical Storm Brett, namely the Mogouj Combined School, the Vidboutai Primary School, the Ave Maria Primary School, Gordon and Walcott, formerly the Anglican School, Bexar Primary, Miku Primary, Choiseul Secondary, Font Saint-Jacques Primary, Soufrière ICDC and Library, Soufrière Special Ed, Soufrière Infant School, Soufrière Secondary School. I think that's the one time the member for Soufrière, Mr. Speaker, notwithstanding we are talking about damage in the aftermath of a tropical system, it is yielding a smile from the member for Soufrière because she knows that her schools will be attended to. Moving on, Mr. Speaker, the Vieux-Fort Primary School, the Bellevue Combined School, Debarra Combined School, Grosley Daycare, Angers Combined, Dennery Primary, Tirocher Combined, Blanchard Combined, Vieux-Fort Post-Secondary, and the Bas Lagoas Combined School. Those schools, Mr. Speaker, were amongst the most severely affected, and the bulk of the money that we will be receiving from the Ministry of Finance will go, Mr. Speaker, towards rehabilitation of school infrastructure in the communities that I have mentioned. Mr. Speaker, we have more than 100 educational institutions that we must maintain on an annual basis. And in the estimates, you would have seen a little more than $3 million having been allocated for school rehabilitation in this country. Mr. Speaker, we've been able to manage that amount and use it very wisely to ensure that we treat the issues as they surface in schools. Mr. Speaker, we are under no illusion that $3 million is not ideal. But in the circumstances, we in education understand. We understand the situation that the country is in right now. We know things will get much better than they are right, having improved in recent times. And so, Mr. Speaker, I have at every opportunity implored the staff of the ministry to maximize the output from the amounts that we have been given. In the case of the Vieux-Fort Primary School, Mr. Speaker, the damage was pretty extensive. And notwithstanding, I would have been given a report by the Permanent Secretary and the Deputy Permanent Secretary in the aftermath of the disaster. I made it my business, Mr. Speaker, to travel to Vieux-Fort on a Sunday with my camera to be able to appreciate and see for myself the extent of the damage. And what we noticed, Mr. Speaker, it was not just the strength of the wind that created the damage, but that the beams, the metal beams from a school that had been constructed, I think, sometime after Hurricane Allen, there was quite a bit of corrosion, and that was undermined with winds of approximately 60 miles an hour. I always have permission from the member for Vieux-Fort South, Mr. Speaker. I think we have a very cordial relationship that does not always manifest itself in the chamber, but it does elsewhere, and so I am under no pressure venturing into Vieux-Fort. I don't know if other members in here can say the same, Mr. Speaker, but I always feel welcome in Vieux-Fort. So, Mr. Speaker, that particular school was severely affected, the Vieux-Fort Primary School. And, Mr. Speaker, we immediately dispatched our team to make the assessment. We have preliminary amounts, Mr. Speaker, as it relates to the Vieux-Fort Primary School, and the work to be done is pretty extensive. The one thing we have been able to do is to speak to some of the prospective contractors and to implore and impress upon them the need for them, Mr. Speaker, to work diligently. And if it means that in some cases they have to work night and day, they will have to, because we do not want for there to be any disruption as it relates to the reopening of school. Mr. Speaker, the Bellevue Combined School in Vieux-Fort North was also damaged. They suffered roof damage, and this includes roof framing, covering, electricals, and the ceiling. And I did visit that school, as I did for Vieux-Fort South, with this time the member for Vieux-Fort North, Mr. Speaker, and in the presence of some of the staff, we were able to have preliminary conversations right there on site in terms of giving a commitment that the Prime Minister and Minister for Finance will find the monies in time for the rehabilitation of that school. And here we are today, Mr. Speaker, feeling vindicated that the Prime Minister, true to form, has found the money. And this morning we are coming to the Parliament for approval to ensure that the repairs are carried out as we would have promised the people. Mr. Speaker, the Montgouge Combined School was also badly damaged, and I think I intimated that this morning to the member for Choiseul, who at every opportunity in the Ministry of Education, and I know it happens with other colleagues of mine on this side of the House, we have tried to, Mr. Speaker, engage and include the member for Choiseul in the discussion as we discharge our duties and our functions to the members of his constituency. So the Montgouge Primary School, Mr. Speaker, has been impacted, and work will commence on that school in quick time. Other severely impacted institutions or schools would have been the Dennery Primary, Mr. Speaker. Damage to windows, and quite a few of those windows have to be replaced. And in these days, when you talk about school rehabilitation and even construction of new schools, Mr. Speaker, it is not acceptable for you to just take a plan as we knew one, lodge it with the DCA for approval. But the nomenclature has changed, and today we are talking about climate resilient infrastructure. So the repairs that we'll be embarking on, Mr. Speaker, would not be done in such a way where we just replace what was damaged. But we have to build back stronger and to ensure that whatever we put in there, Mr. Speaker, will be able to withstand whatever weather systems that come our way. But, Mr. Speaker, this is part and parcel of the Ministry of Education preparing this country for the reopening of school in September. The physical infrastructure is important, but we are doing a lot more than just the customary rehabilitation of schools, complemented by an additional $2 million to treat specifically with the damages inflicted by the tropical weather system. Mr. Speaker, as we speak, in excess of 4,000 laptops have been configured, and they are ready to infiltrate the school system. Every child in Form 1, Mr. Speaker, as we speak today, has been guaranteed a device. That device has been programmed, it has been charged, and it is in safekeeping, hoping that when each Form 1 child in this country, irrespective of the educational district, irrespective of the parents' political affiliation, every single child will be issued a brand new laptop computer at orientation. And we have agreed, Mr. Speaker, that no longer should we disrupt the term to have those ceremonies in the middle of September disrupting the programs of principals. But at orientation, we will make the devices available, and of course there will be symbolic ceremonies done not to disrupt the schools. Mr. Speaker, every single child in Form 1 will be the recipient of a $500 bursary compliments the government of St. Lucia. Mr. Speaker, every single child in this country, whether you Form 1 or Form 5, this government has guaranteed $2.6 million to pay the facilities fees. Mr. Speaker, every child in the public school system in Form 5, writing, mathematics, and English CXC-CSEC, Mr. Speaker, the government has committed monies to pay CXC-CSEC for that. Mr. Speaker, every teacher in the public school system has received an increase, or will be receiving this month an increase in the materials allowance as was promised by this Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, we are upgrading schools. More than 150 more learners can now access early childhood education, Mr. Speaker, because we have established 9 pre-K classes within select schools in communities around the country. And with the pre-K, Mr. Speaker, as the name suggests, pre-kindergarten, these are young children who are transitioning from early childhood centers into mainstream education. And we notice that there has been a significant drop in the national school population, and we find excess space at some schools. But Mr. Speaker, what we must also take into consideration is that in addition to the excess capacity you have at schools, we also pay close attention to the availability or lack of early childhood services in communities. So in communities where we have the space and we realize there is a deficit in terms of early childhood services, we move in quickly, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that we establish the pre-K program. And I was fortunate enough maybe 2 weeks ago to visit the setup in Montgouge in Choiseul, Mr. Speaker, and speaking with a technical officer, telling how impressed I was with the setup, the height of the face basins, because of course you're dealing with 3-4-year-olds, Mr. Speaker. I mean, the setup is just so inspiring, it is just so pleasant, Mr. Speaker, that the officer said to me, wait till you see what is happening in other parts of the country. So we are, Mr. Speaker, taking early childhood education very seriously, and only recently the Prime Minister and I, in a very informal conversation, gave the commitment that more resources will be pumped into early childhood education in the coming months. Mr. Speaker, across the sector at the primary and secondary school levels, the government expends in excess of $2.2 million annually, as I said earlier, for facilities fees. And this is something that we should never shy away, Mr. Speaker, from drumming, from echoing, and for repeating, if only for effect, Mr. Speaker. We must, because the point has been made before, that there are parents in this country. Lani moun a pays ça, Mr. Speaker. Le ouev yo tan ron a machine ka vini. Yo kadou si a machine passager ki la, ou si ça c'est 20 payan ki ka vini. Ek adam moun le ou tan ron sa, ek 20 nan ka vini ek se 20 payan. Ek un pain ka vini pour $2. Lani moun ki nou vle kwey, e ben nou pa vle kwey, lani moun ki passa même acheter yon pain pour bay ishodite. Ek même se moun sa, yo pa ni sa ka create sustainable forms of employment pour adan yo. Yo pa ni l'argent because yo pa ka travay. Ek ou ka di mwen apre yo ka struggle dele pour acheter yon livre diwi. Notwithstanding that we've been able to provide assistance to quite a few, and the number of persons receiving social support from the government has expanded exponentially, Mr. Speaker. The reality is that we still have people in our society who are struggling to make ends meet. And then you say to that individual who struggles to buy a pound of rice or a pound of sugar that you must find $100 or $150, in some cases $200, to pay facilities fees. It is against that backdrop that a government with a conscience can say that we are abolishing, Mr. Speaker, the facilities fees, and the Minister of Finance can commit $2.6 million. Mr. Speaker, we've had problems with school security. And sometimes, Mr. Speaker, people react to the news when they notice there are incidents where schools have been burglarized and schools have been tampered with. Mr. Speaker, we find ourselves in a very indelicate position. Monies that otherwise we would have taken to augment and to improve pedagogy or the teaching learning process, some of those monies, Mr. Speaker, now have to be spent on the installation of cameras at school to help beef up security. So when you hear people looking to politicize crime and make it seem as if crime is a construct of this government, Mr. Speaker, we have to be very, very careful with that. Because at the end of the day, when the criminals come and they are having a field day, Mr. Speaker, everybody is adversely impacted. When they burglarize a school, I am certain in every school in this country, we have children who come from homes that support all the political parties of this country. So here's an opportunity for us once again, Mr. Speaker, to implore not just the members in this honorable house, but all patriots and responsible citizens of this country to speak in one voice in denouncing criminal activity. It pains me, Mr. Speaker, for the Ministry of Education to have to take $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 that we could have used to do so much more in the school system. But instead, Mr. Speaker, we have to procure CCTV cameras and other security devices to provide security. But that having been said, that is not me in any way trying to diminish the importance of security. Of paramount importance to me as minister and the parliamentary secretary and this government and senior management personnel in the ministry is the safety and the security of the teachers, the students, and the ancillary staff in the education system. Mr. Speaker, we are going big on increasing access to higher education. This administration has promised to work towards having one university graduate in every household. And Mr. Speaker, we are keeping this promise. We have seen the scholarship offerings to our students increase significantly over the past 2 years. And we expect, Mr. Speaker, more students will access tertiary level education under the first generation and the UniPass initiative. The first generation, we've spoken about it here before, Mr. Speaker, where we are programming specifically for individuals who are coming from homes and families where we have never had a university graduate. It cannot be right and progressive in a country where some people can get by because they have the means, and others who have the aptitude, who have the capabilities, they are stagnated because their socio-economic circumstances do not allow them, Mr. Speaker, to move forward. We are bridging that gap. And last year, we enrolled 50 first-generation scholars at Monroe College, Mr. Speaker, and in the next few weeks, another cohort of 50 will also enroll to complement the 17 Monroe scholarships. But we have gone further, Mr. Speaker. We have listened to the cries of people studying online, particularly those enrolled with the open campus of the University of the West Indies. And the point was made, and the question has been asked. But if we are doing so much in partnership with Monroe, what about the University of the West Indies? And our government, Mr. Speaker, will not shy away. We will not shy away from telling this honorable house, and by extension the people of this country and the region, that we have a responsibility to the University of the West Indies, one of the best institutions in the world. And it's against that backdrop, Mr. Speaker, against that backdrop, we had a cabinet conclusion written approximately a month and a half, 2 months ago, where persons who are enrolled with the University of the West Indies Open Campus, they can now apply for assistance, Mr. Speaker, with their programs, hoping that the government can meet them halfway and they can successfully complete. Mr. Speaker, we have an initiative that we just launched recently, UniPass, University Package of Assistance for Student Success. Mr. Speaker, we believe that for a small island developing state, we do not have bauxite, we do not have oil, we don't have mineral resources, Mr. Speaker. the quality of your human resource base, more than anything else, will determine whether we survive in a globally competitive environment, whether we think, or whether we lag behind countries of similar circumstances in the same space looking to improve the lot of their people. So, Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Education has received and continues to receive a sizable chunk of the national budget. Mr. Speaker, it was the Ministry of Education under the Labour Party administration that ushered in universal secondary education. And the member for Vieux-Fort South, who was the Prime Minister at the time, and Justice Michel, Mr. Speaker, who was the Minister of Education at the time, when the conversation started on universal secondary education in this country, that was met with a lot of opposition by people who ought to have known better. Mr. Speaker, that was resisted, and it was being done at a time when in some parts of the world they had moved so far ahead of us that the conversation at the national level was about universal university education. But here we were in St. Lucia arguing and debating and looking to oppose universal secondary education. Education has always been, Mr. Speaker, at the forefront of the programming of Labour Party governments, not just now, but in times past. Because we understand what education can do. We understand how we can cause somebody to improve their lot in life. We understand how we can take a child who is from humble circumstances, Mr. Speaker, and beginnings, and propel that child into positions of influence where their ability will be given expression, notwithstanding what they would have had to endure in their formative lives, Mr. Speaker. Et moi, je veux dire, Mr. Speaker, that l'argent nous avons mis ici aujourd'hui, qu'au Premier ministre là, a pris près 5 millions de dollars off budget là pour mettre en ça créer emergency fund pour ça faire travail en l'école qui était tapé dommagé par tropical storm breath. Ça c'est un bon bagaille et moi pas si monter seulement puisque moi c'est ministre éducation et c'est bagaille ça qui fait en budget ministry mais moi comme Mr. Speaker ça c'est un coup encore qu'au premier ministre là et puis un gouvernement les bas qui venir devant qui a mouché cette liste that nous qui mettre l'argent en affaires l'école, puisque nous avons une éducation mais cette ici, soyez et que nous savons plus que n'importe autre bagaille qui est en pays, c'est l'éducation nous qui a déterminé qui a le pays nous en tant que venir. Nous devons prendre l'argent ça, Mr. Speaker, et acheter des chevaux, et là les gens ici qui ont nous conseillent que nous avons un cheval là. Moi c'est là les gens ici qui ont dit nous que nous avons un cheval là pour marcher. Mais Mr. Speaker, nous pas faire ça. Nous devons prendre l'argent ça avec l'autre bagaille. Mais nous avons pris l'argent ça, Mr. Speaker. Et là, les chimères qui sont mauvais, le Premier ministre de la Caïdou, even moi, tous les jours, moi, je vais about chimères pour constituency. Moi, je vais vieux pour parler about chimères. But nous devons prendre l'argent avec n'importe côté. But we campaigned on the mantra of putting people first. And any government or any country that spends and invests monies in the education of its children is a government and a country that is on the right path. And so, Mr. Speaker, with this very brief contribution, I lend my support unequivocally to the motion to transfer $5.4 million from the Consolidated Fund to the contingency fund to finance repairs to the schools that I just mentioned. Mr. Speaker, I believe the money will be well spent. The money will be well managed, and I have a very dedicated team of officers in the plant and equipment unit of the Ministry of Education, of course, being expertly guided by the Deputy Permanent Secretary. And I'm hoping that the enthusiasm of the new Chief Education Officer, when you take that, Mr. Speaker, and it complements what obtains at the moment, it will make for a more effective Ministry of Education, it will make for more comfortable schools, and it will make for better learning environments for our children so that they can rise, irrespective of where in this country they're from, to realize their potential, Mr. Speaker, get the education that they deserve, and when they get to an age where it is time for transitioning to higher education, we will find the scholarship opportunities for those who don't have the means, and hopefully, Mr. Speaker, upon graduation, they will take their rightful leadership places in this country, and we can sit back and feel vindicated that we made the right decisions at the right times for the advancement of our country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support the motion.
Member for Beaufort South.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning to you, Mr. Speaker, and greetings to all parliamentarians present here today. Mr. Speaker, it looks like I arrived just in time for the passage of this motion. And of course, like the speaker before me, I do welcome the presentation of this motion to the House this morning. So, Mr. Speaker, I will of necessity be brief, but just to raise a few issues concerning the recent passage of the storm. Mr. Speaker, it is perhaps better known now that the storm inflicted the most significant damage on the constituency of Beaufort during its passage, and this is mainly due to the fact that the center of the storm passed between St. Vincent and St. Lucia. But it is astounding still that the damage of such severity occurred. As you heard from the member for Dennery North and Minister of Education, both the primary school and, of course, the post-secondary school suffered severe damage to the roofs, to their roofs rather. And in addition to this, we also suffered some damage to the St. Jude preschool on the field itself. Happily, Mr. Speaker, I am in discussions with the Minister for Finance over possible assistance to the managers of the preschool to undertake some repairs. This would be very, very urgent in time for the reopening in September. As you know, with preschools, it's not just having the children in the building, but of course providing extended assistance to the parents of the children who are normally employed and need to find a place for their children during the day. The St. Jude preschool has been in existence for so many years, and there's no question that they have provided a badly needed service. So I am exceedingly happy by the prospect that they can get some assistance to redo the entire roof of the building, which was blown away by the storm. Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry that the member for Grosley and the Minister of Youth and Sports is not present with us today, because my concern also has to do, I know he's in Parliament. Oh, he's listening somewhere, all right. Well, that's good. My concern has to do with the Philip Marcelin Pavilion. This building, the main building, also suffered considerable damage. The roof was also torn away. And perhaps this was made easier by the fact that the roof of that building had deteriorated significantly over the last few years, and no remedial works were ever conducted to the roof now for the last 10 years. So it was a fairly easy victim of the storm itself. But I accept that there's more involved in the repairs to the roof, but I have to emphasize that the repairs really need to be treated as necessary and as urgent, if only because, you see, Mr. Speaker, Beaufort South has suffered immeasurably in the last year because of the absence of serious activity in the community, allegedly because of the crime situation in the community. I myself have had reason to take umbrage at some decisions of some bodies, including the Black Heart organizers last year, because I did feel, irrespective of what the police said, that the decision to relocate or reassign Black Heart games elsewhere was not the wisest decision, because no community should have to face that degree of marginalization and disregard as the people of Beaufort had to endure as a result of these decisions. I don't think decisions like that necessarily help the fight against crime, because what you're really doing is to just punish ordinary people, and that's really not the best thing to win their support. But Beaufort carries its crosses, Mr. Speaker, and I'm certain, however, that a more enlightened approach will emerge after this experience. All of this is to say, Mr. Speaker, that I do hope that attention would be paid to the pavilion. I'm sorry I missed the presentation of the Minister of Finance, so you have to forgive me for what he may have said that I'm now covering, this is all done in good faith because of my concern for these things. But there is the wider issue that I wanted to focus on. I have in the past repeatedly addressed this House about the peculiar vulnerability of Beaufort South because of the sea level. And the time has really come for a more constructive approach to be taken to protecting Beaufort South and the community of Beaufort South. The warnings about the rise of sea level and, of course, the rise in temperatures need to be taken very seriously in all of these islands, and especially in those islands where geography compels us to take those warnings very, very seriously. Mr. Speaker, the first area that I want to mention and ask the Ministry of Infrastructure to begin to examine seriously is the northern part of the airport, the northern part of the runway, abutting very close to the sea above Sandy Beach. Years ago, the ministry had done some very good work to construct huge boulders, but if anyone visits there, you will notice that the power of the ocean, the consistent assaults by heavy seas have displaced some of those very, very heavy rocks. And I am certain that I am seeing even greater incursion onto the highway, although, as I said, some remedial work has been done. It really does mean that more resources have to be put to protect that northern boundary of the airport, but also to ensure that the disposal of water, particularly coming from the drain leading from the airport, has to be taken far more seriously than has been the case in the past. I should not have to be taking resources from my CDP's funds to be cleaning the main drain alongside the Beaufort fence. I mean, this should be seen as a drain belonging to the state that ought to be cleaned regularly by the Ministry of Infrastructure. It's basically unfair for the parliamentary rep to have to utilize resources meant for use of the community, and it's time the Ministry of Finance changes its attitude to these matters. It's unacceptable that a major drain like this is left without appropriate desilting measures, but it goes back to this broader issue. That's correct. I've just spent $25,000 to clean that main drain. I think it's 25 or 22 or thereabouts. So that's a fact. But you know, Mr. Speaker, what's that? Minister of Finance to make the money available to infrastructure or directly to the constituency if infrastructure is a problem. That having been said, Mr. Speaker, my deeper concern has to do with the issue of sea level in that stretch of road from Sandy Beach going to Bruceville. And the time has come really to conduct a very serious study to determine what mitigation measures can be taken in that area to protect that area. We have a fundamental issue that there's no question that it is an extraordinarily beautiful part of the country, and I think testimony bears out the popularity of that area because on every holiday or weekends, hundreds of St. Lucians go down to Sandy Beach to enjoy the beach. Although my thinking is that the time has come to put a levy on all outsiders to raise some money to clean the beach. But that's another matter. Yes, we need to protect our patrimony since others are not protecting it for us. But jokes aside, Mr. Speaker, I think we do need a serious assessment to indicating to helping us to decide what mitigation measures are necessary, because you could see the erosion and the damage now taking place very, very, very rapidly. So, Mr. Speaker, let this just be a little wake-up call for all of us. Nobody expects things to be done overnight, but we have enough signals to suggest that the preparation should be underway, and we have to take mitigation very seriously. Of course, if the sea level rises to the levels forecasted by those who are charged with the responsibility to monitor the changes in the climate, then it means that that area will be in very serious trouble, and so too will be the international airport. So we need to really take responsibility, and I fear that SLASPA will not take that responsibility. It is not usual that SLASPA has interest in these matters. If they had, they wouldn't be putting a terminal so close to a river as was happening in the last few months with the construction of this new terminal building. So it's a serious matter that has to be looked at, but we need to prepare to decide what kind of mitigation measures. So, Mr. Speaker, I welcome this resolution. I hope that the repairs could be done very quickly, so that the children can return to school in good time. And of course, I want to plead in particular for this Philip Marsland Pavilion. And I made comment about Black Heart a while ago, because I'm aware that the Black Heart organizers want to locate some of their matches in before this year. I don't know whether we'll have the time to do so, but I am hoping that if we can get that main pavilion attended to, that would be possible. I wouldn't want them to use the building as another excuse after what happened to Vieux South in the previous year. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful for this. I welcome this, and certainly it is a step in the right direction. So it certainly this resolution or motion certainly wins my fullest support and my blessing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The member for Swazelle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, after listening to the brief contributions from the member of Dennery North and the member for Beaufort South, it is with some trepidation that I want to use the word brief for my contribution. Mr. Speaker, it is no secret that governments have a significant deficiency when it comes to maintaining the public plant in St. Lucia. And we speak to not just schools, but all other government buildings. And I think the time is right when a lot more focus should be placed on, consistent maintenance of government buildings, government plants, Mr. Speaker. I say that because the motion before us is to transfer from the Consolidation Fund $5.4 million, particularly to deal with recovery efforts after Tropical Storm Brett. And I dare say that had more consistent maintenance be done on our plants, maybe we would not be scrambling to address many of the recovery efforts at some of our schools. I have always said in this house that Choiseul Saltibus has the most schools in the various constituencies, and obviously it's a significant or Herculean task in terms of maintaining these school plants. Under the last administration, a significant amount of money was put in annually to maintaining some of these school plants, because I remember when coming into office and visiting the schools, the roofs were plagued with termites. Droppings were falling on students. The the toilets and washroom facilities are horrible. We have in our midst in the gallery a former principal turned politician, and I'm sure she would appreciate at her time as principal the amount of effort that was put into her school in Delse in maintaining particularly the toilet facilities. And it was something throughout the constituency of Choiseul, the condition of these washroom facilities and the amount of money that the past administration put into the entire island education system in terms of maintaining the school system. In fact, I believe the administration before the last one had a budget of about $1 million annually, and we increased that to tenfold, $10 million. And there were quite a significant amount of work done in the communities to ensure the comfort and the security of students, teachers, and staff alike, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Education, member for Dennery staff, rightfully indicated that a premium should be placed on education. I agree with him, Mr. Speaker. There's no doubt that a lot more, needs to be done when it comes to our children, because the education field and platform is changing rapidly, Mr. Speaker. I would have appreciated, because he seemed to be visiting my constituency quite often, that he would at least invite me on some of these school visits. Mr. Speaker, I could definitely point out to him some of the concerns that have been raised, Mr. Speaker. But all that being said, Mr. Speaker, I welcome the motion and the move, but I think it's important that the maintenance, and not just the maintenance of existing structures, but one of the shortfalls of the politics in our localized area is when something is done by one administration, the next administration seems to just close their eyes on it, and it becomes a white elephant, Mr. Speaker. These are some of the things that we need to move against, Mr. Speaker. Maintaining, Mr. Speaker, the public buildings, because it's continuity all the way, Mr. Speaker. We must continue, and I'm sure you can think of what I'm speaking about. We'll have a special conversation on that. Well, that was not even off the ground. Huh? But St. Jude's is another story altogether, but we'll deal with that. The Prime Minister has said that there's going to be a whole parliament just for St. Jude's, so I'm waiting for that, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, that being said, of course I welcome the motion in terms of the amount going to the school plans. I applaud, the funds that have been allocated, but I would also make a plea to the Minister of Education, recognizing, the number of school units in Choiseul-Saltibus area, that, further support be given to some still outstanding work to be done. I thank you. School rehabilitation. You're giving Pauline more.
Member for Vieux-Fort North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the motion and to just offer some very brief remarks. I want to thank, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister for the allocation, which will support the rehabilitation of the Bellevue Combined School. And I want to thank the Minister for Education, who, as he said, Mr. Speaker, visited the Bellevue Combined School after the storm. With me, yes, with me. He called me, Mr. Speaker. I was trying to tend to my vegetables and to my garden, and he called me. And and we went to the Bellevue Combined School. So thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, the tropical storm Brett did do a number on my constituency, Mr. Speaker. As the member for Vieux-Fort South indicated, the communities in the south were worst affected. And in addition to the Bellevue School, a number of our farmers, Mr. Speaker, the banana farmers, plantain farmers,
our CMOS farmers. As you know, we have the largest number of CMOS farmers in St. Lucia, in the Vieux Fort North area, in the Opicon Canals area, Savans Bay, and a number of them lost many lines, Mr. Speaker. We have fishers who lost so many of the fish pots. But I'm very pleased that the member for Dennery South has confirmed that the Prime Minister has allocated some, is it 3.4 million or 2.4 million, so that our farmers and fishers from Vieux Fort North will get some relief, I think beginning this week. It's also very important to note, Mr. Speaker, that Tropical Storm Brett left many of our many of our roadsides and drains. We have to work with Ministry of Infrastructure, and the Minister has spoken to me. We have to deal with some of the slides and the drains. And although we did not have much damage at the Piero Primary School, we note that the Piero Primary School, Mr. Speaker, is in dire straits and in need of total rehabilitation. We had some damage, some wind damage, but not as much as the Bellevue Combined School. So it is for me to simply say, Mr. Speaker, that I support this, and I look forward to the contractors working very efficiently. I do not know yet who the contractors will be, Mr. Speaker, that just as the Minister said, we will certainly speak with them, those who are successful, to ensure that they work very diligently to deliver the school before the reopening of school. So I support this, Mr. Speaker. C'est gens, c'est parents et c'est teachers qui a servi l'école Bellevue qui est content parce que le Premier ministre là a mis l'argent pour nous ranger l'école Bellevue. Ministre de l'Éducation a visité l'école là après Tropical Storm Brett. Il a visité immédiatement après Storm là. Je me suis dit un petit blague qui était couillé, moi sorti en jardin moi. Avec nous aller à l'école là, garder des difficultés. Avec nous tenir un chat difficulté à Vieux Fort North. Un chat c'est canal là, nous tenir à Falaï qui nous pas encore ranger, nous pas encore avec ministre transport, ministre Travaux. Ça parlé avec moi, avec nous regarder qui ça nous a fait avec ces canal là, avec ces à Falaï là. Moi je veux dire c'est Jean Belvia qui c'est contracteur qui a travaillé ça là. Nous ne pouvons pas savoir qui laisse, mais n'importe contracteur qui joue un contrat là, qui a travailler plus vite que possible, parce que nous voulons travailler la finir avant l'école ouverte. Comme ça, je suis bien content, félicitations pour le Premier ministre là, qui mettait l'argent pour le ministre là, qui a travaillé avec tout le staff là, pour assurer que l'école Bellevue avec les autres écoles là, manger plus vite que possible. Moi aussi dis que même si Fétaï, l'école PO a pas volé, un chat gloire tué. Avec nous savons toutes ces écoles là qui a Vieux Fort North, l'école PO c'est lui qui a plus danger croisé. Un chat pour le bois, un chat bagaille à l'école ça là. Avec nous regarder pour nous vieux réhabiliter l'école ça là en neuf totalement. Mais moi je remercie le ministre là avec le gouvernement pour support qui a bail l'école Bellevue parce que whole Fétaï là building qui est en mi-temps, nous savons toute Fétaï la sortie. So merci Anshai. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The member for Babino.
Mr. Speaker, it would be remiss of me if I did not lend my support to the motion on the floor as presented by the member for Castries East and Prime Minister of St. Lucia. I seek your leave, Mr. Speaker, to first congratulate the Ministry of Education and the Education Fraternity for the new principal of the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College, Dr. Charles. I want to congratulate the Ministry of Education and the Education Fraternity for the new Chief Education Officer. These are very critical positions that will help translate the education system, transform the education system by strengthening the leadership in these areas. And as I say, Chief Education Officer, it really means Chief Education Officer, Mr. Speaker. And if you are familiar, Mr. Speaker, with the Education Act of 1999 and the powers that are conferred to the Chief Education Officer, a heavy burden rests on the shoulder of the Chief to move and shake the education system. Mr. Speaker, having given 41 years of my best years in education, I feel very passionate, very moved when I see the kind of contribution that this government is putting in education. 5,400,000 to assist schools that were affected by Brett, in addition to everything else that the Minister of Education has articulated in support for education. It clearly indicates that this is a government that looks at the future. And the future of this country lies in the hands of the next generation. Yes, we will build roads, we will put infrastructure, but the human resource capacity is what will make that difference. And by investing in education is a huge investment in our development. I want to thank the Minister for including Debara School. That's a school many years ago the last administration was thinking of closing down. But if you close that school, you destroy the community. And therefore, we have to ensure that there is life in that community. And this is a community that is rich. It has opportunities for tourism, for economic activity, and everything else. And it is close to the mountain that has provided the best waters when St. Lucia had no water. That's the La Sorcière Mountain. And Debarra sits at the base of La Sorcière Mountain. And there are some things when we get into the House, Mr. Speaker, that we forget. But when the election results were called on the 26th of July, 2021, the first box that was announced came from Debarra, Mr. Speaker. And I want you to check your election report and you will see what happened in that first box. And therefore, everything rolled after. Mr. Speaker, the parliamentary rep for Beaufort South also speak to the issue of climate change. And we are now in the hurricane season. And we have to brace up ourselves. We don't know what will come in the next few months. We are in the month of August, the rainy season. And we're doing some repairs, we're doing some work, but we don't know what will happen because children are getting ready, parents are getting ready to send their children to school. And therefore we have to look at the bigger picture with regards to climate change and how we brace ourselves. Many years ago, this government established education for all. At the international level, the cry was for education for all. But afterwards, some countries were able to achieve education for all, Mr. Speaker. But they shift the goalposts to quality education. And that is what this government is focusing on. Not just access, but what type of education the children will be receiving. And by this contribution, Mr. Speaker, it is a contribution to improving the quality of education. And when you improve the conditions for teachers and principals to work, what we call the working conditions of teachers and principals, it becomes the learning condition for students. And it is also an economic contribution to parents. So this money that the Prime Minister has put aside there is to improve the environment for the teachers and the principals to perform. and it also improves the environment for the children to learn. And I'm hoping that, Mr. Speaker, that the Ministry of Education is already paying attention to a new trend that may develop. And I listened to the results of the last CPEA exam, and we are noticing that our boys are improving, and people are already attributing that to technology, because the boys pay a lot of attention to the computer. And formative evaluation, where we do not have this one-time exam, you either pass or fail. We assess the children throughout, and they are using the technology, the laptop. All these things are already beginning to show signs of improvement in the education system. Mr. Speaker, I want to commend the Ministry of Education, because last year when school reopened, the Honorable Prime Minister gave every cabinet minister the morning before cabinet, and he asked us to go and visit the schools in our constituencies to ensure that everything was intact, and if there were any difficulties, bring it to the cabinet the same morning. That's the day school reopened. And I visited all the 7 schools in the Babono constituency, Mr. Speaker. And I'm pleased to report to the Ministry of Education and to you, Mr. Speaker, in this honorable house, that every single school I visited said this is the first time school had reopened in a long time, and they did not have any major challenges, Mr. Speaker. And that was because the Ministry of Education ensured that the repairs and the minor things that were affecting the teachers and students, they attended to that during the summer holidays. And again, we are seeing that happening with the Prime Minister putting the funds up front to assist the Ministry of Education so that the children can go back into an environment, the teachers can go back into an environment that is decent to work and to learn. Mr. Speaker, I want to congratulate the 6 primary schools in Babodo, Mr. Speaker. I don't know if the infrastructure had anything to do with it, the conditions and the laptop, but this is the first time in history that all the primary schools in Babodo scored above the national mean in the CPA exam, and they celebrated that. I commended them, and I want to thank them for the efforts that they put in the children's education. Mr. Speaker, the laptops are already paying dividend, the facilities fees are paying dividend, the support for CXC fees are paying dividend. And Mr. Speaker, I want to say that publicly, Mr. Minister of Education, Parliamentary Rep for Denry North, we have a school in Babono that's waiting to cut the ribbon officially, because they might sneak in if you don't cut it. The Lager Primary School, Mr. Speaker, I taught at this school for 8 years. And when I hear about the lifespan of Green Heart, this school was built, it's a Green Heart building, they call it Orinoco buildings, that came from Guyana. These were the prefab buildings. And the school at Lager and Foaso, Mr. Speaker, got these prefab buildings. And they said the lifespan for these buildings were 20 years. Well, Mr. Speaker, the Lager School has been in existence for the last 53 years, the Green Heart building. So it has survived 33 years beyond its life. And this government is ready to give the students at Lager a state-of-the-art primary school. So we are waiting for the Ministry of Education to do the honors so that these children, after waiting for 53 years, the parents will see that they have a decent environment to work. We look forward to that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when we talk about education, Deputy Speaker, the Prime Minister in his budget this financial year said health and security are priorities for this financial year. But education has always been a priority. Always. The Prime Minister don't have to put it as a priority. It has always been a priority. And if we want to see good results, we want to see national development, we want to see productivity, you have to invest in education. And for a government that invests heavily in education, I commend the Prime Minister, the Cabinet of Ministers for having the vision, the foresight to see it necessary to invest heavily in our human resources in the country. And for this, Mr. Speaker, I commend the Prime Minister for bringing that motion on the floor with the support of the Ministry of Education, who has promised to deliver to the people that we will see education move tenfold. Mr. Speaker, while we look at development, Deputy Speaker, this morning I was fortunate to attend the sword turning ceremony of an agro-processing plant for women and girls. That is in keeping with the trend of this government, where we provide opportunities for all. The government is looking at the youth economy. We are looking at micro, small and medium-sized business. We are looking at the community tourism, Mr. Speaker. And that investment in education is another plus for the government in terms of what we are doing. I notice, Mr. Speaker, in addition to government, I don't know how the Prime Minister does it. He doesn't share all the secrets in cabinet. There are some he keeps to himself. You have to. So where he gets the money, because what happened, Mr. Speaker, the government has given back so much to the people. Taking out tax on this, taking out, I say, but if he's not collecting tax, Mr. Speaker, how will he have money to give back? However, he finds a formula that works. And I need to commend the Prime Minister for using all the sciences that he knows. He knows in financial management, so that we work with him to deliver to the people of St. Lucia. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I give my full support to this motion, and let us see how it plays out in the public domain, and let us guarantee St. Lucians a better future with quality education for all. I thank you.
Member for Library.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker, for granting me leave to make a brief intervention. I will commence my brief discourse this morning, Mr. Deputy Speaker, by indicating that I'm happy we are not here today for another Madipwete to facilitate bogus fly-by-night projects, but for repairs of the school plant associated with the development of our nation's key asset, our human resource. We all know that education leads to a more productive future, both for the individual and for societies. As a matter of fact, if we take our journey through the corridors of time, we'll recognize, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that Russia, together with its wider construct of the USSR, mounted from the status of underdeveloped country to developed country and superpower, mainly on the wings of education. Japan owes its phenomenal growth as an industrial power to education. And we can go through Asia and look at Taiwan and other countries around the world. And only last week, through the Saudi Development Fund, we were able to secure funding for St. Jude's Hospital, and of course, for the stadium. But that's for another show. This is why the Philip JP administration makes health and education urgent priorities. And there was a lady called Mary Levins who said, and I quote, "Students who are not well enough will not learn well enough." So if they are not well enough to learn, they cannot learn well enough. And although, Mr. Speaker, the economy is still recovering, at the last budget we noted that we have not returned to pre-COVID levels. But this is what the manager of this economy has been able to do for education. We brought back the laptop programs, and you heard the Minister for Education indicating that every child that would go to Form 1 would receive a laptop at registration. We and Form 4. We saw the payment of facility fees whilst we're recovering, Mr. Speaker, from COVID. This is commitment to education, commitment to the people of this country, a commitment to utilize the revenues that we are able to raise to fuel the development of the people of the country. We are still in recovery mode, and the manager of the economy, the honorable member for Castries East, the Honorable Philip J. Pierre, is able to pay math and English for CSEC, school bursaries, and to provide relief, Mr. Speaker, for the school children and the staff at our various schools. But not only his competence in the field of economics and finance that I wish to accentuate, Mr. Speaker, I want to, for the record, because I know that the misinformation barons are at work. And of course, we like to maneuver within the parameters of the law. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I support the resolution brought to this Honorable House from the Minister of Finance to approve the transfer of $5,400,000 from the Consolidated Fund to the Contingencies Fund for the purpose of A, supporting the recovery efforts of the Department of Education, Sustainable Development, Innovation, Science, Technology, and Vocational Training due to the passage and damage caused by Tropical Storm Brett. And B, catering for future emergencies. As the Prime Minister and Minister for Finance alluded to, Mr. Speaker, whilst he was presenting this motion, the Consolidated Fund, the Public Finance Management Act, Cap 1501, makes provisions for the following funds. The Consolidated Fund. These relevant provisions in the aforementioned Act that provides for payments into and out of the Consolidated Fund are sections 13 and 14 respectively. The Contingencies Fund. The relevant provisions governing the Contingencies Fund are sections 15, 16, 17, and 19 respectively. The Sinking Fund. This fund is governed by sections 20 and 21 respectively. We all recall, Mr. Speaker, the former Prime Minister and Minister for Finance castigating our government for not establishing a sinking fund for debt repayments. But no sooner had he established the sinking fund, Mr. Speaker, he sank it. Mr. Speaker, he of course did not understand that our government inherited a massive deficit, and it really made no financial sense to borrow funds at 5% to establish a sinking fund on which the government would earn 2 or 3%. So you want to go and borrow at 5%, you have a big loan paying at 5%, but you put it in some account where you are getting 2 or 3%. No sane Minister for Finance would believe that this is better business. And if you are employed in any business, they're going to fire you as a result, which is what the public of this country did on the 26th of July 2021. The Public Management Act establishes a special fund which is governed by sections 22, 23, and 24, and a trust fund which is governed by section 25 of the Public Finance Management Act, Cap 1501. Mr. Speaker, as I indicated earlier, the contingencies fund is governed by sections 15 to 19, and sections 15 provide for establishing the contingencies funds and state, for the purposes of section 81 of the Constitution of St. Lucia, Cap 1.01, there is established a contingencies fund. It is clear from the foregoing, Mr. Speaker, that the Constitution of St. Lucia makes provisions for the establishment of a contingencies fund. In fact, section 81 of the Constitution of St. Lucia states as follows: there shall be such provisions as may be made by Parliament for the establishment of a contingencies fund and for authorizing the minister responsible for finance, if satisfied that there has arisen an urgent and unforeseen need for expenditure for which no other provision exists, to make advances from that fund to meet that need. 2, where any advance is made from the contingencies fund, a supplementary estimate shall as soon as possible be laid before the House. And when the supplementary estimate has been approved by the House, a supplementary appropriation bill shall be introduced as soon as possible in the House for the purpose of replacing the amount so advanced. Unquote. From the foregoing, Mr. Speaker, the Constitution provides for Parliament to establish a contingencies fund to meet urgent and unforeseen expenditures for which no other provisions exist. The approval of Parliament is required, Mr. Speaker, for the establishment of a contingencies fund and for authorizing the Minister of Finance to make advances to meet that need, namely an urgent and unforeseen need for expenditure for which no provision has been made. Section 16, Mr. Speaker, provides for transfers to the contingencies funds and states as follows: the minister, who is the Minister of Finance, may, by an affirmative resolution of Parliament, transfer from the consolidated fund a prescribed sum as may be required for the operation of the contingencies fund. Hence, this section provides the reason why the Minister of Finance is coming to this honorable House to seek authority by way of an affirmative resolution to transfer funds from the consolidated fund to the contingencies fund. Section 17 provides for the administration of the contingencies fund. This section provides as follows, Mr. Speaker. 1, the Accountant General shall administer the contingencies fund. 2, the Minister, after consultation with the Accountant General, may, by order, publish in the Gazette, specify the amount for permanent capital in the contingencies fund. 3, the Accountant General shall keep the contingencies fund separate from other accounts maintained at a financial institution approved by the Minister, and shall A, pay into that account all monies appropriated to the contingencies fund by an appropriation act. B, without delay, pay from the contingencies fund all advances made under Section 19. Section 18 provides for the preparation of financial statements in respect of the contingencies fund to be prepared by the Accountant General, which is to be audited by the Director of Audit. The checks and balances, Mr. Speaker, are clearly provided for in Section 18. Finally, Section 19 of the Act provides for advances from the contingency fund. 1, the Minister may, in the case of an urgent or unforeseen need for expenditure, by a contingencies fund warrant and in anticipation of the grant of an appropriation by Parliament, authorize an advance from the contingencies fund where A, no monies have been appropriated or for which the sum appropriated is insufficient. B, funds cannot be reallocated as provided for under Section 43. And C, public monies cannot be deferred without serious detriment to the public service. 2, The total of the sums authorized under subsection 1 to be advanced from the contingencies fund shall not exceed the total sum authorized under section 17. 3. Where an advance is made from the contingencies fund under this section, a supplementary estimate of the sum required for the service for which such advance was made shall be laid before Parliament as soon as possible, but in any event not later than 4 months from the date on which the contingencies fund warrant was issued, and shall be included in a supplementary appropriation bill for appropriation. This section, Mr. Speaker, is in keeping with the need for meeting the requirements of the Constitution, which I stated earlier. Mr. Speaker, we are not doing things when convenient. We are maneuvering within the parameters of the law, which is necessary for the maintenance of good governance in this country. 4. On the grant of an appropriation to meet the expenditure in respect of which an advance is made under this section, the contingencies fund warrant authorizing that advance lapses and ceases to have effect, and the advance is deemed to have been made for the purpose of the appropriation and shall be accounted for in the prescribed manner. Given the foregoing, Mr. Speaker, this has clearly identified the need for unforeseen expenditure that cannot be met, since no monies had been appropriated or for which the sum appropriated is insufficient. Funds cannot be reallocated as provided for under Section 43. C. Public monies cannot be deferred without serious detriment to the public service. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, this is an urgent and unforeseen expenditure which was not provided, and therefore I wish to give my full support to this resolution. That 1, Parliament authorizes the Minister of Finance to transfer from the consolidated fund to the contingencies fund the amount of $5,400,000, and of course support the recovery efforts of the Department of Education, Sustainable Development, Innovation, Science, Technology, and Vocational Training due to the passage and damage caused by Tropical Storm Brett. And B, cater for future emergencies. Mr. Speaker, I now yield the floor.
Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank members for the support, Mr. Speaker. Just want to mention just a few things, Mr. Speaker. The member for Choiseul, Mr. Speaker, he had the old refrain of the government spending $1 million in schools, Mr. Speaker. It's a pity that the member for Choiseul and his party, when they cling on to something that's not true, they believe that they can say it all the time, repeat, and people believe it, Mr. Speaker. We have on countless occasions explained, both in government and out of government, that during our term in office, school repairs were housed in the Ministry of Infrastructure, because we thought it better where all the expertise, the engineers, the building technicians, the quantity surveyors, all of them are housed in the Ministry of Infrastructure. So it made more sense if all repairs, all repairs to public buildings were housed in the Ministry of Infrastructure, because all the experts are there, Mr. Speaker. But you know, the member for Choiseul, he knows very well why construction was taken away from the Ministry of Infrastructure and sent to other ministries, including education and economic development. He knows very well, Mr. Speaker. He knows very well, and he doesn't want me to go down that path, because he knows very well why the Ministry of Infrastructure was systematically disenfranchised, and construction went to the Ministry of Economic Development. He knows very well why it happened. He knows it's because contractors and consultants could be chosen by direct award in the Ministry of Economic Development. And he knows very well who the contractors were chosen, what contractor was chosen. And he knows very well about the $70 million worth of direct awards. And he knows very well about the contractor who right now, as we speak, has over $100 million worth of direct awards from the Ministry of Economic Development. He knows very well. I don't know why he's going down that path. I don't know why he's doing that, Mr. Speaker. Why is he doing that? He knows very well that the Ministry of Education, $10 million was given for school repairs. In his time, he knows. And I asked him to outline to me the schools that were repaired for $10 million. Just give us a listing. And what is the cost of each of the schools? I wish that he would not send me down that track. Because I've listened to all the propaganda, all the lies, all the postings, and I have not responded. But he's telling me down the track, Mr. Speaker. Because at some point, the truth, I don't understand, Mr. Speaker, how the opposition lost an election and they still continue to do the same things that caused them to lose. They persist in doing the same things that cause them to lose. Lies, misinformation, planting fake news. These days they have some foreign fella giving news about St. Lucia. Nobody knows where he come from, but he everywhere giving news about St. Lucia. All kinds of that has no traction, Mr. Speaker. So it was never the $1 million, Mr. Speaker. The member of social knows was $10,000 given to the principals of schools for petty cash so they can do little repairs to their schools. That was what $1 million was for. Not for the total repair of schools. The repairs for schools were in the Ministry of Infrastructure's budget because the Ministry of Infrastructure handled repairs for schools. And the Minister of Finance is there, he can verify what I'm saying, Mr. Speaker. That's what happened. And he knows very well that the money that was spent for schools, the repainting of schools, the work that was done in schools, Mr. Speaker, was done through the Ministry of Infrastructure. And we never had $10 million to spend, but the output was a lot more. So I want to say, maybe he may not have known, but I want to tell him, Mr. Speaker, be careful when he's going down that path, Mr. Speaker, of repeating these lies, constantly repeating these lies. Mr. Speaker, the member for Viewfort South, and I agree with him on the airport. And we're going to have a debate about the airport also. Because an airport that was supposed to have the original drawings for the airport was for 600 piles, Mr. Speaker, piles. 600 piles in one location. No one can tell me the reason why the location was changed from the original location to a new location. We brought in a consultant, and the consultant said that the person who made that decision needs to have his head re-examined. And and just by the word of one man, the terminal building was removed from that location and put in a location, and it necessitated 3,000 tiles. 3,000 piles, 3,000, and a cost overrun of over $46 million just in the foundation of the airport, Mr. Speaker. $46 million cost overrun for the foundation alone. Mr. Speaker, and they talk, and they give this self-righteous posturings. We are good. We did so many good things, Mr. Speaker. Just like St. Jude, we're going to come there. Just like St. Jude, Mr. Speaker. Anything that will benefit the people of this country, the opposition is against, because they're not in government. Anything. So you talk about airports and piles. Mr. Speaker, that's for another show, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to assure the member for Viewfort South that the Philip Master grounds are going to be repaired, what we are waiting for is for the appropriate contractor to effect the works, Mr. Speaker. So as soon as the contractor is chosen, the works on the Philip Master grounds are going to be effected, Mr. Speaker. And on his preschool, Mr. Speaker, we are working on that. He will hear from me very soon about the preschool, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm glad the member for Choiseul knows that we are doing work on the schools in Choiseul. We are doing work in Choiseul, a lot of work. Choiseul has more community centers per area than any other place in St. Lucia. There are more community centers in Choiseul per square foot than anywhere in St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. But when we came to the government, we didn't stop it. We continued. And I'm going to come to Choiseul to open two or three of them with him, if he invites me, Mr. Speaker. But let me tell you what his government did. You know, what his government, let me remind you, Mr. Speaker. And you know, Mr. Speaker, it fascinates me, the self-righteousness of the United Workers' Party and the surrogates. It fascinates me. They pretend as if they were never in government. That St. Lucia began on the 26th of July, 2021. That's when St. Lucia began. So, Bordelais, Customs, 26th of July. All before that, the police, 26th of July. All before that, St. Lucia did not exist. Or things were perfect in St. Lucia before the 26th of July, Mr. Speaker. That's how they pretend. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to tell you something about the Choiseul schools and why we continue to do work in Choiseul, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I don't want to speak about my constituency. The Minister of Education, I have spoken about what they've done, how they allowed the Anchibo school to come to a complete state of disrepair, complete in the Anchibo school, because it's located in my constituency. But what they don't understand is that the children who go to Anchibo are not all from my constituency. You know, in their short-sightedness, they don't realize that they're causing people in other parts of the country to suffer. Anchibo, they allow a complete block to deteriorate. They refuse. It was the Anchibo school was in a list of schools to be repaired. They took it out. And I'll tell you what they did again. The Anchibo wall, the Marshall wall, Mr. Speaker, starting from Castries going up to Anchibo, Mr. Speaker. When we were in government, the World Bank began construction of that wall, because anytime rain fell, the George Charles Boulevard, that area, the place they call dem places, that's how they refer to it, dem places, as if people don't live there, dem places, but these are my people. These walls, when rain fell, flooding, we started construction of these walls. The World Bank started construction of these walls, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you know, when the United Workers' Party got into government, they found the construction of these walls going. You know, the guys wrote the funding agency and told them, stop the construction of these walls and build the walls in Southeast Castries. And I invite you, Mr. Speaker, I invite you, let's go see it. Yes, it's coming. So many things coming to Parliament, you'll be surprised. You see, you all been just do this, that, talk this. I hope you all begin to shout victimization. I hope you don't do it, you know. I hope. Because you all have been pushing, do this, do that. You know, they wrote a letter asking, and you know, they have the bravado, Mr. Speaker, to, you know, this bad journalist, do what you want, Mr. Speaker. The people have done what they want already. The people have done it already. We leave you in the hands of the people. They are the ones who judge. So, Mr. Speaker, the guys wrote a letter saying, stop the walls in Castries East, in the Marchand area. Stop it and bring it to Southeast Castries. And up to this day, these walls have not been completed. We're just trying to do it now, Mr. Speaker. And if you go by the car park, or by the car park on the Marshall Road, you'll see the river bank is right on the verge of the water course, Mr. Speaker, because of the victimization of the United Workers' Party refusing to do work in Castries East because I was a parliamentary rep, Mr. Speaker. So when he speaks about this, he must be careful, Mr. Speaker, about continuity. He must be very careful about continuity. Very careful. You may not be involved because probably you were not in the sanction, probably outside. You may not have been there, you may have been on the margins because basically you're a good guy. But the company that you keep, that's bad. And I've warned you to join that new day. Join the new day. The new day just take one step on the other side. That's where the new day is. I've told you so already. Where you are not good for you. I've warned you. Anyway, Mr. Speaker, so we continue, Mr. Speaker, in the progress as far as education is concerned, Mr. Speaker. So this continuity that he's talking about, he must be careful. Because everything that we try to do, Mr. Speaker, we get opposition, albeit by word of mouth, Mr. Speaker. And I've warned public servants, I've said to them, work with the policy of the government. And there is a trend of attacking public servants. They attack the chief of police, the acting commissioner of police. There's an attack. There's a personal attack that is run on public servants to cause them not to do their job. The last attack was on the control of customs. Mr. Speaker, do you know, before the control of customs was appointed by the Public Service Commission, before I became minister, I didn't know him. I did not know the control of customs man to man. I didn't know him. When I became Minister of Finance, the Cabinet Secretary informed me of who the Comptroller of Customs was. And we had a discussion, and the Cabinet Secretary said that he was the Comptroller of Customs. I did not even know the gentleman face to face. I didn't know him, Mr. Speaker. But I heard a long story about Comptroller of Customs. And yeah, I'm his godfather too. You understand? A long story, just like they say I'm his godfather. A long story, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, that's not how we operate. That's not how we operate. So now the story now is on the Comptroller of Customs. That's the story, Mr. Speaker. A gentleman who is one, Mr. Speaker, anyhow. But what keeps me going, Mr. Speaker, is the support of the people of St. Lucia. That's what keeps me going. How the people of St. Lucia appreciate what the government is doing. And you see it in all the celebrations. You see it in emancipation. They made a big political hula-boo with Carnival in Soufrière. A whole story. Carnival in Soufrière. Look what happened in Soufrière Sunday for Carnival, Mr. Speaker. Not one incident. Not one incident. And they were praying 100 murders. St. Lucia will have 100 murders before the year is over. That's what I mean. Tell me an opposition party can pray that the country has 100 murders before the year is over? An opposition party, you want to get into government? You mean tell me an opposition party can consistently, persistently support a gentleman who encourages young people to use ammunition? You support that, Mr. Speaker, because you want to get into government? And your surrogates, a lot of people will say whatever they want. I was in Vieux-Fort. I was in Vieux-Fort on Sunday, Mr. Speaker. My roots are in Vieux-Fort North. I was in Vieux-Fort on Sunday. I always go to Vieux-Fort. I had business in Vieux-Fort. I have interest in Vieux-Fort. So, Mr. Speaker, so when I heard, Mr. Speaker, when I heard this thing about, tell politicians not to go to Vieux-Fort. I mean, Mr. Speaker, but I know why. Because this man lost his deposit in Vieux-Fort. So when you lose your deposit in Vieux-Fort, I mean, you must tell people that you lose your deposit. These ones forget. They forget. After we took his deposit in Castries East, we took it there too. Yeah. This guy's political history is having lost 2 deposits. He has a record of having lost the most deposits in St. Lucia's political history. That's his record. The member, yes, he got the person who run for Christopher Hunt party got more votes than him. You don't believe that? And now you're talking all over the place. The member for Viva South took one deposit, I took another. 2 deposits in your political history. Are you talking? So, Mr. Speaker, but they encourage that because they are clutching at straws. They're clutching at straws, and not how they try to spread disunity among the men, women, and this party, Mr. Speaker. That will not work. We come from strength to strength, Mr. Speaker, and the challenge is the next election, because the next election, I've said to them, I may have to choose a leader of the opposition from my party. I may have to ask one of these gentlemen to be lead, or ladies to be leader of the opposition. I may have to choose it. So, Speaker, I want to thank the member for his contribution and again invite him to do the right thing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, the question is that Parliament authorizes the Minister for Finance to transfer from the Consolidated Fund to the Contingencies Fund the amount of EC $5,400,000 to A, support the recovery efforts of the Department of Education, Sustainable Development, Innovation, Science, Technology, and Vocational Training due to the passage and damage caused by Tropical Storm Brett, and B, cater for future emergencies. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay the following motion, sign my name. Whereas under Section 1091A of the Value Added Tax Act, Cap 15.42, the Act, it provided that the Minister of Finance may by order publish in the Gazette amend the schedules to the Act. And whereas it is further provided under Section 1092 of the Act that an order made pursuant to Section 1091 of the Act is subject to an affirmative resolution of Parliament, except where the amendment is to the customs tariff headings only. And whereas the Minister of Finance seeks approval of the draft value-added tax amendment Schedule 1 order to amend Schedule 1 of the Act by an affirmative resolution of Parliament to include as zero-rated goods for a period of 2 years commencing from 2nd day of August 2023 and ending on the 1st day of August 2025, a supply of goods under the customs tariff headings 3925.90, other articles of plastic, Semi 2.10 to Semi 2.16 steel, 8302.41 based metal mounting suitable for buildings. Be it resolved that Parliament, by affirmative resolution, approves the draft value added tax amendment of Schedule 1 order, which amends Schedule 1 of the Act to include as zero-rated goods for a period of 2 years, commencing from the 2nd day of August 2023 and ending on the 1st day of August 2025, a supply of goods under the following customs tariff headings: 3925.90 other articles of plastic, Semi 2.10, Semi 2.16 steel, 802.41 base metal mountings suitable for buildings. Mr. Speaker, when we were in Parliament, in fact, after my budget statement in April, Mr. Speaker, I made a point that the government would be introducing a health and security levy. And I want to know, Mr. Speaker, that the former government had also passed a health and security levy, but conveniently they have forgotten that they passed, the last government also passed a health and security levy, and when we got into government, the new government of their party removed that levy because we introduced VAT, Mr. Speaker. And the member for Castries North, at the time, he supported it, and he has admitted to supporting it at the time, the same he supports it now, because the time is right for it now, Mr. Speaker. So, but the problem with the last government is they never want to admit the truth. That's the basic problem. So they also had passed a health and security levy. So, Mr. Speaker, when we passed the health and security levy, we made a point in that goods that were zero rated for VAT purposes or exempted for VAT purposes, Mr. Speaker, there would not have been a health and security levy on these goods. Let me say that again. All goods that were zero rated for VAT or exempt for VAT, there would not have been a health and security levy on these goods, Mr. Speaker. Then, Mr. Speaker, we removed VAT on certain building materials, cement, steel, plywood, and galvanized covered material. We removed the VAT on them, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, there are thousands of goods that are imported in St. Lucia, thousands of goods, Mr. Speaker. So, there were some discrepancies in that some goods on the customs tariff, and even though it's a big book, the customs tariff is thousands of goods, Mr. Speaker. There were some goods where they were under the classification of building materials, steel in particular, but they were not on the exempt list or the zero rated list, Mr. Speaker. So in the review, we found that we had to make these changes. And when I spoke of the health and security levy, I made the point that because of the voluminous nature of goods that are imported, there are going to be some adjustments. So what we're doing this morning, Mr. Speaker, is we are making these adjustments to ensure that the reduction, the removal of VAT on building materials, of all types of building materials, and in that case, these building materials, Mr. Speaker, are steel and steel-based mountings, steel-based mounting suitable for buildings, Mr. Speaker. We are ensuring that these become zero rated or exempt so that they can't be the health and security levy on them, so they can continue to benefit from the removal of VAT on the health and security levy, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I want to make a point about the VAT removal. Mr. Speaker, the opposition, as usual, they have attacked the VAT removal on building materials. They have attacked it. They said that it's people don't eat plywood and it's for my friends. I have the most friends in the world, Mr. Speaker. The same people who were saying that I could not attract investment, the same people who were saying I stammering, so I cannot attract investment in St. Lucia. The same people were saying that the international community would not take me on. The same people, now they say that I have so many friends in the business world that I have removed the penalties and interest on taxes and VAT for my friends in the commercial sector. Is it going to believe that? The same people, who were saying I couldn't get investment, the same people, until I've proven that in my 2 years, we've had more investment in St. Lucia than the 5 years with this figure. And these are facts. They can't deliver. So what they must do is just attack me personally. That's what they have to do. So, Mr. Speaker, when we removed the penalties and interest on VAT and all other levels of taxation to give the private sector a break, Mr. Speaker, to improve the balance sheets of the private sector, because VAT due and taxes due are either a direct liability or contingent liability on the business balance sheets in this country, Mr. Speaker. We removed it for everybody. Everybody. It was not a matter where you have to come to cabinet and apply. Once you owed VAT, or you owed taxes, or you owed PAYE, we removed the penalties and the interest for everybody. But all in a sudden, it's for my friends. All in a sudden, it's for my friends, Mr. Speaker. So we removed that. And I must say, many businesses are responding to that call, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, we removed VAT on some building materials and on sanitary goods for ladies. We removed the VAT, Mr. Speaker. But there is some rumor that the clients cannot benefit from the VAT removal because of new stock and old stock. Mr. Speaker, I want to implore the private sector to work with us. We have proven to be one of the most business-friendly governments St. Lucia has had. Both this government and the last government, Mr. Speaker. We have given the private sector the most generous incentives possible. We've never been to any meeting and called any member of the private sector a fool. We've never gone to any meeting and shouted at members of the private sector or members of the hotel or members of the hotel industry or attacked the executive secretary or the Hotel and Tourism Association. We've never done that. We've never attacked anybody in the National Trust. We've never refused to employ anybody in the National Trust. We've never attacked the Executive Director of the National Trust. We've been the most friendly government to the business sector. They have access to the minister, and my style is to allow my ministers to do their work. They have access to the minister, and they have access to me. And we had discussions about it, Mr. Speaker. Let me refresh the public of St. Lucia on how VAT works. VAT is paid at the customs. And every 21 days, there is a reconciliation of VAT paid and VAT collected. At the end of 21 days, if you have collected more VAT than you paid, you are refunded your money. And if the government, you collected less VAT than you paid the government, you give them back your money. So there can be nothing like old stock or new stock. Because the VAT you paid on the old stock, on the stock that you have, at the point of reconciliation is going to balance it off. So I want to say to the members of the private sector, work with the government. The government has shown a level of generosity never seen before in the history of St. Lucia. Never seen before. That's the level of generosity we have shown. So I want to implore members of the private sector, and I must tell you, Mr. Speaker, I've gotten very good reviews from some private sector enterprises. I won't mention names here. Some people have said to me, look at what I had to pay in the last week of July. Look what I'm paying now. Substantial support, substantial help. Some members of the private sector, I applaud them for that. But I'm not mentioning any names, Mr. Speaker. But there seem to be, and these reports are coming from consumers, that when they go to certain stores, they are being told they must pay VAT because it's old stock. I do not want to have any conflict in the private sector. The private sector is the engine of growth. I made my money in the private sector before. Now I'm making none now. But I made my money in the private sector before, Mr. Speaker. So I'm an advocate for the private sector. In fact, they have a friend in this Prime Minister. I don't interfere with them. I don't give them instructions. I don't tell clients which lawyer to go to. I don't get involved in these things. I don't blacklist people. I don't tell people if they go to this lawyer or go to this business, I won't give them business. I don't do that. I don't. And they can tell you, I don't. But, Mr. Speaker, I am begging them to cooperate with the government. Please, please, this is a plea. For the items where the VAT has been removed, allow the people to benefit from that concession. Please. Please. The old stock rule is not right. It's not true. You will get your money back when the reconciliation is done. So there is no old stock. There's a cutoff point. Mr. Speaker, I made that pronouncement from April, and I've had to tell my technocrats the same thing. When the Minister of Finance, regardless of who he is, makes a pronouncement, you have to follow up to the pronouncement of the Minister of Finance. You can't wait. I have to tell them that. So the idea that we not, and we came back to, for another resolution, another bill to give some time. And I did that because I want to cooperate with the private sector. You can't tell me you didn't have any time. That was said in April, and we said it to be implemented in July. That was, these statements were made in the country's budget by the Minister of Finance, regardless of who the Minister of Finance is. So the idea of you didn't have time is an excuse that I accepted this time because I want to work with the private sector. I want the private sector to continue to be the engine of growth. So I accepted this excuse about time. But there's nothing like time in this business. A pronouncement by the Minister of Finance is a policy, and the technocrats in the Ministry of Finance, the private sector, they must follow these pronouncements until they hear different, regardless of who the Minister of Finance is, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, this amendment is to ensure that the benefits of the 12.5% reduction in VAT, everybody benefits, Mr. Speaker. So this is why we are making the adjustments. And the other one, Mr. Speaker, the other bill is the same. I don't know if you want me, I can't deal with it now, but the other bill is the other resolution is the same, basically the same, Mr. Speaker. But, do it now? It's basically the same, yeah. But the other one is even more significant in that the other one is helping the manufacturing sector, which I know the member Shozel is very close to his heart. Now, Mr. Speaker, let me tell you something. I'm glad that he brought it up, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you know, there is so much hatred in this country. The opposition is boiling up so much hatred in this country that the members of the Manufacturers Association, in all good conscience, wrote the Minister of Finance with some queries, because I don't think they were present at the meeting that the Ministry of Finance held in the Chamber of Commerce. They wrote it with all good conscience. The letter was did not intend to do any harm. They were asking a question. But you know, Mr. Speaker, that letter was leaked to the press. And a big story. The world is coming down. The government don't know what they're doing. Peer again. And all just trying to create disorder, trying to create disunity, and trying to create confusion because of their hatred, their love for power, what they call in the ghetto, their copel. They can't understand that the people rejected them. They can't understand it. The people have rejected me twice. Chagoué pouvoir. They can't understand it, Mr. Speaker. So every day. So that letter from the Manufacturers Association, that letter, made a big fuss of that. So this resolution, Mr. Speaker, the next one, is going to clarify that. It's going to bring some of these goods so the manufacturers can't be unduly affected. Just like tourism, Mr. Speaker, I must talk about tourism. Because, Mr. Speaker, the story was the health and security levy will affect tourism. Long letter, tourism. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm affecting the export industry's tourism. But the same party, the next week, big press release, I not taxing tourists. You want to believe that? You want to believe that, Mr. Speaker? And you expect people are going to support you? The leader of the opposition, a long letter, health and security level will affect tourism. The next week, his party is saying that the I'm not taxing tourists enough. The same party, the same leader. I hope it's the same leader. So, Mr. Speaker, this resolution, that's what it does, it tries to streamline it, and we may have to come back again when we find some of the goods are affected. We have to come back because it's a massive set of goods. We are dealing with thousands of goods. So we may miss some, so we have to come back. But, Mr. Speaker, I'm saying to the private sector, work with us. If there's anything you find we shouldn't do, and the other bill will say the same thing, work with us, Mr. Speaker, and we will make it easier, the transition will be smooth. But when the Minister of Finance will make a pronouncement at the next budget, I hope that everybody listens and take action to make good your action to make good the words of the Minister of Finance, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I ask members to support this resolution before this Honourable House. I thank you.
Honourable members, the question is that Parliament, by affirmative resolution, approves the draft value added tax amendment of Schedule 1 order, which amends Schedule 1 of the Act to include as zero-rated goods for a period of 2 years commencing from the 2nd day of August 2023 and ending on the 1st day of August 2025, a supply of goods under the following customs tariff headings: A. 3925.90, other articles of plastic; B. 72.10 to 72.16, steel; C. 8302.41, base metal mountings suitable for buildings. Member for Swazell Saltibus.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is correct when he indicated that he made the pronouncement from April in the budget. And when these bills came to the House, the question I must ask the Prime Minister is whether from the time of the pronouncement, the kind of consultation that was engaged in, because I'm thinking, and I'm of the view that some of the matters that are being raised at this point, it may mean that they were insufficient or an absence of consultation. And so that is the concern I'm having, because we've seen some amendments here. There are going to be amendments coming lower, and also in the bills. And, you know, we've seen amendments in previous House sittings, and I'm sure there will be many more to follow. As he rightfully indicated, it's quite a bit, and things will come up over various periods. But some of them, for example, when we speak to the packaging material for manufacturers, I would think that that would have been a very, you know, basic insight that should have been included from the get-go. So the question is whether or not you know, these consultations were had and were sufficient enough. As a matter of fact, only this morning, and Mr. Prime Minister, maybe the AG could consult with customs personnel as we debate it, so that you can find out if I'm correct. But only this morning I got the information that coated galvanized, or maybe the colored galvanized, is not included in it, and so no, apparently not, because there was a conflict in terms of that. So just to double check the codes and see if it is included. I think I got it from a very good source to indicate that. So I just want you to double check on that. But you know, Mr. Prime Minister continuously uses hatred and hungry for power, and you know, it's unfortunate that such statements have been made, because I'm of the view that, you know, the words are being switched around to rather indicate our kind of politics, which is unfortunate, because that's the kind of politics, whenever an opposition power, the kind of politics that is being played, you know, and it is wrong. We're not going there. I'm not speaking about that. He's not a member. He's not a member of the. Who was at the convention? Come on, stop speaking. No. We have a politics, and we spoke about the New Day. We have to change a lot of things going forward, okay? Because what is being preached in this country right now is very unfortunate. Especially, you know, we have young people who on the turn of a switch, you know, they can act anyway. And I think it's very important, you know, that a different conversation is being held to particularly our younger people, and we need to stop some words. We need to stop some words. It has nothing to do with convenience, because you've never heard me speak any way otherwise. So, Mr. Speaker, I recognize that the amendments will have to be made, and obviously a lot of it is for the benefit of the general population. And so, Mr. Speaker, I welcome the amendments that have been made this morning. Thank you. This afternoon.
Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much. I thank the member for sure, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, I agree with him, Mr. Speaker. And that's the new politics we wanted. This is why we gave him and his leader an allocation under the CDP. That's the new politics. That's why, Mr. Speaker, that's why we give them allocation under the education assistance grant, Mr. Speaker. That's why we give them assistance, Mr. Speaker, because of the new politics, Mr. Speaker. Because he will recall that we sat here, I was there, the member for Library was there, we were there, 6 of us, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we pleaded, please, give us something for CDP. That's what they did. Pull back in the chair. No, you didn't laugh. No. Because one day, and let me tell you something further. You don't know what they said? When I plead, they say, you crying, you just start to cry. That's the new politics. We mean for that you crying, you just start to cry. That's the politics. That's the politics. So he must look at both sides. That's the politics. You know the politics, Mr. Speaker? In whose community? Not in mine.
Not in mine either.
Not in mine. No. The Belarus doctrine promoted by you.
What's the rest? Ask him what is the Belarus doctrine. What's the Belarus doctrine? What is it?
The member for View for Self will ask you for property rights in the Belarus doctrine.
But there's such a thing. What's the Belarus doctrine?
No, Mr. Speaker, you know, I remember, Mr. Speaker, the member for View for Self, Mr. Speaker, one day, and I give these anecdotes, these stories, Mr. Speaker, to show the measure of the man and how we deal with our politics. One day, we have a discussion about a certain politician, and some people in the group wanted to go heavy and hard on things that were factual but were not nice. And the member for View for Self said, you're not going there. You are not going there. This era is past. We're not going there. We're not going there. There's another incident. Somebody wrote me a letter about a brother-in-law. I go so far. I have the letter. You understand? That letter was so damning. Letter, signed, sealed and delivered. Not no artificial intelligence. I refuse to use that letter. Refuse. Up to this day. It not even be in my book. Up to this day, Mr. Speaker, I refuse to use it. Refuse to use that letter in politics, Mr. Speaker. You've never heard me attack any civil servant by name in politics. Never. Never heard me attack any man's child, his wife, his spouse. Never, Mr. Speaker. I have never come in this honorable house or anywhere in the political platform, and all those who say that they know the history, I ask them to pull out their history books and hear Philip J. Pierre ever talk about anybody's wife, child, or relative on a political platform. I analyze politicians, the individuals. Sometimes I get rough and tough. That's the nature of the game. But I never get personal. Never go into your private life. Never. I've never gone into his private life. The first thing they did, Mr. Speaker, is to attack my daughter. The first thing. Attack her in the most nasty and untrue form. Mr. Speaker, till I had to tell her to cool out. The first thing, Mr. Speaker, is attack people's personally. The first thing they do, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, the member for Choiseul must not play it one cap fits all. And it's not surrogates doing it, Mr. Speaker. Not only surrogates, the people themselves, known political aspirants, people who want to run seats. They're the ones who are doing it. Some who run and some who didn't run, some who tried to run and weren't successful. So, Mr. Speaker, I agree with him. We need a new politics. And that is why we started. You must look at how we started the politics, Mr. Speaker. Look at how we started it. Everybody was telling us, do this, do that. We said, no, let's have committees to look into the matter before we condemn anybody. You can look at how we did it. Think about it, member for Choiseul, how we approached our politics. We had a committee for St. Jude. We had a committee for Hiwanora International Airport. You understand? We had a committee, a study into the Sufra Development Foundation, and one into the John Compton Dam. And one into the Rodney Bay Road. The results have not been revealed. And St. Jude Hospital. No. So we didn't just go ahead and castigate people. We didn't do that, Mr. Speaker. We didn't spread rumors and innuendo and just we treated a leader of the opposition with dignity and with respect. We allow him to change office. We allow him to change office. Yes. We allow him. With the office that was for that member for Cassius North was, member for Beaufort South was, and the member for Miku North was. Wasn't good for him. It was too close to Mondidor. So we allow him to change office. We allow him to change office. Yeah, we didn't get involved in that kind of pettiness. We allow him his security, his driver. When I was in government, when I was in a position for me to get a driver, you know that. You in cabinet, you know the amount of discussion and confusion. You know that. You don't know that. You weren't at the time. You don't remember that, but I know that. Well, we know the amount of confusion it was. He was in the margin. You know the amount. You know. In fact, let's not go there. Let's not go there. Let's not go about the things that they try and do me when I was in opposition. No, let's not go there. Let's not go there. So, Mr. Speaker, thank you very much, and I ask that the resolution be passed by each one of us.
Honourable members, the question is that Parliament, by affirmative resolution, approves the draft value-added tax amendment of Schedule 1, order which amends Schedule 1 of the Act to include as zero-rated goods for a period of 2 years, commencing from the 2nd day of August 2023 and ending on the 1st day of August 2025, a supply of goods under the following customs tariff headings. A. 3925.90, other articles of plastic. B. 72.10 to 72.16, steel. C. 8302.41, base metal mountings suitable for buildings. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay the following motion standing in my name. Whereas under Section 17 of the Health and Security Levy Act number 16 of 2023, the Act, is provided that the Minister of Finance may, by order published in the Gazette, amend the schedules to the Act. And whereas it's further provided under Section 17 of the Act that an order made under that section of the Act is subject to an affirmative resolution of Parliament. And whereas the Minister of Finance provided under Section 17 of the Act that an order made under the section of the Act is subject to an affirmative resolution of Parliament. And whereas the Minister of Finance seeks approval of the draft Health and Citizen Security Levy, amendment of Schedule 3 order to amend Schedules 1, 2, and 3 of the Act by an affirmative resolution of Parliament to 1. In the case of Schedule 1, include the foreign goods under the foreign customs tariff. Chapter 27. Mineral fuels, mineral salts, and products of their distillation. Bituminous substances, mineral waxes. In the case of Schedule 2, include maintenance and repair of motor vehicles as a service that requires payment of a health and citizen security levy. C. In the case of Schedule 3, under paragraph 1, include the following imported goods customs tariff chapters as exempted goods. Chapter 88, aircraft, spacecraft, and parts thereof. Chapter 89, ships, boats, and floating structures. Chapter 19, special transactions. By B, delete Chapter 7 from the list of exempted goods. 2. Under paragraph 2, include the following imported goods custom tariff numbers as exempted goods. 2209.00.00 vinegar and substitutes. 2522.10.00 quicklime. 2522.20.00 slaked lime. 2522.30.00 hydraulic lime. 2523.21.00 white cement. 4014.90.00 other hygienic or pharmaceutical articles including teats of vulcanized rubber other than hard rubber with or without fittings of hard rubber. B. Replace the foreign customs tariff number, tariff subheadings and numbers 2523.10.00 description cement clinkers. 3. Replace Fibers 5 to exempt goods pertaining to medical equipment and parts, including the goods specified in that paragraph. Replace paragraph 6 to exempt goods pertaining to security and surveillance equipment, including the goods specified in that paragraph. 4. Include as exempted goods all classes of raw materials and packaging materials imported for use in the manufacturing of goods, local manufacturing certified as such by the ministry responsible for commerce. B. All classes of raw material and packaging materials imported for use in the agricultural industry and certified as such by the ministry responsible for agriculture. Be it resolved that Parliament by affirmative resolution approves the draft Health and Citizen Security Levy amendment of Schedule 3 order, which amends the Schedules 1, 2, and 3 of the Act. 2. A. In the case of Schedule 1, include the foreign goods under the following customs tariff. Chapter 27. Mineral fuels, mineral oils, and products of their distillation, bituminous substances, mineral waxes. B. In the case of Schedule 2, include maintenance and repair of motor vehicles as a service that requires payment of the health and security levy. C. In the case of Schedule 3, under paragraph 1, include the following imported goods customs tariff chapters as exempted goods. Chapter 88, aircraft, spacecraft, and parts thereof. Chapter 89, ships, boats, and floating structures. Chapter 99, special transactions. Delete Chapter 27 from the list of exempted goods. Under paragraph 2, include the following imported goods customs tariff numbers as exempted goods. 2209.00.00 vinegars and substitutes for vinegar obtained from acetic acid. 2522.10.00 quicklime. 2522.20.00 slaked lime. 2522.30.00 hydraulic lime. 2523.21.00 white cement. 4014.90.00 other hygienic or pharmaceutical articles, including teats of vulcanized rubber, other than hard rubber, with or without fittings of hard rubber. To replace the following customs tariff numbers, tariff and subheadings and numbers 2523.10.00, description cement clinkers, cement clinkers. 3. Replace paragraph 5 to exempt goods pertaining to medical equipment and parts, including the goods specified in that paragraph. 4. Replace paragraph 6 to exempted goods pertaining to security and surveillance equipment, including the goods specified in that paragraph. 4. Include as exempted goods all classes of raw materials and packaging material, imported for use in the manufacturing of goods by local manufacturers and certified as such by the Ministry responsible for Commerce, and B, all classes of raw materials and packaging materials imported for use in agriculture and certified as such by the Ministry responsible for Agriculture. Mr. Speaker, similar to the last resolution, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that the manufacturing sector and the agriculture sector do not pay health and security levy on the imported raw materials. To ensure that the manufacturing sector does not pay the health and security levy on the raw materials and the packaging material similar to the agriculture sector, Mr. Speaker. Out of an abundance of clarity, the manufacturing sector will not pay health and security levy on the raw materials or on the packaging materials once it's certified by the Ministry of Commerce. And Mr. Speaker, to correct a discrepancy on surveillance and security equipment. Similar to the last bill, Mr. Speaker, the last resolution, to tidy up the goods that are not liable to paying the health and security levy. All goods that are exempt and all goods that are zero-rated do not pay the health and security levy. And out of a balance of caution to ensure that the manufacturing sector does not pay a health and security levy. I ask members to support this resolution.
Honourable members, the question is that Parliament, by affirmative resolution, approves the draft Health and Citizen Security Levy amendment of Schedule 3 order, which amends Schedules 1, 2, and 3 of the Act to A, in the case of Schedule 1, to include the following goods under the following customs tariff. Chapter 27, mineral fuels, mineral oils, and products of their distillation, bituminous substances, mineral waxes. B, in the case of Schedule 2, include maintenance and repair of motor vehicles as a service that requires payment of the Health and Citizen Security Levy. C, in the case of Schedule 3, on the paragraph 1A, include the following imported goods, customs tariff, chapters as exempted goods. Chapter 88, aircraft, spacecraft, and parts thereof. Chapter 89, ships, boats, and floating structures. Chapter 99, special transactions. B, delete Chapter 27 from the list of exempted goods. Under paragraph 2, include the following imported goods, custom tariff numbers as exempted goods. 2209.00.00, vinegar and substitutes for vinegar obtained from acetic acid. 2522.10.00, quicklime. 2522.20.00, slicked lime. 2522.30.00, hydraulic. 2523.21.00, white cement. 4019.90.00, other hygienic or pharmaceutical articles, including teats of vulcanized rubber other than hard rubber, with or without fittings of hard rubber. B, to replace the following customs tariff number 2523.10.00, cement clinkers. Replace paragraph 5 to exempt goods pertaining to medical equipment and parts, including the goods specified in that paragraph. Replace paragraph 6 to exempt goods pertaining to security and surveillance equipment, including the goods specified in that paragraph. Include as exempted goods A, all classes of raw materials and packaging materials imported for use in the manufacturing of goods by local manufacturing and certified as such by the Ministry responsible for Commerce. B, all classes of raw materials and packaging materials imported for use in the agricultural industry and certified as such by the ministry responsible for agriculture. The member for Library.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand in support of the resolution by the Minister of Finance to approve the amendment of the Health and Citizen Security Levy order to amend Schedules 1, 2, and 3 of the Health and Citizen Security Levy Act as required by Section 17 of the Act. This Act, Mr. Speaker, was approved by this Honourable House at the last sitting of Parliament on July 11, 2023. At that sitting, the Minister for Finance provided the rationale and justification for the passage of the Health and Citizen Security Levy Act. Fellow parliamentarians were unanimous in supporting the Minister for Finance in passing this act, as health and citizen security were identified as two strategic priority areas that have been under-resourced in the past. And it is clear that effective measures required to implement strategies and policies in both health and citizen security must be supported by more resources, which the Health and Citizen Security Levy will provide. The amendments to the respective schedules are essentially to address some areas of oversight, and hence my full support for this resolution. Mr. Speaker, the opposition continues to peddle propaganda and mistruths about the levy. And we find ourselves in a situation where we have to engage in a constant battle to dispel these lies. The reality is, Mr. Speaker, when we counter with the facts, they peddle other mistruths, which require us to further counter with facts. Mr. Speaker, it is clear that the government led by the Honorable Philip J. Pierre is delivering effectively on our mandate, including restoring economic growth, building a resilient economy, and providing more resources for our social services. This performance, Mr. Speaker, has now caused the opposition to shift to a mode that I have never seen in the history of this country. A rare form of desperation as they seek to regain power by whatever means necessary. They have abandoned the traditional style of pleading tearfully for restored confidence in their failed policies. This is why, Mr. Speaker, they have chosen to pursue the Cambridge Analytica approach. Our government must be on its guard at all times to respond to this incessant campaign of lies, rumor, and misinformation that will be peddled by the opposition more and more as we progress through the term. But, Mr. Speaker, we are not going to be distracted. We are on a course to deliver to the people of this country, and despite the propaganda and the lies, we will climb to a higher altitude where we can deliver more effectively to the people of this country. Mr. Speaker, it is clear that the Honorable Member for Castries East and Member for Finance, the Honorable Philip Joseph Pierre, continues to radically restructure our fiscal policies, involving a major revamping of our income tax structure to remove thousands of our citizens from the tax net and therefore will not be required to pay any income taxes. In addition, tax amnesties and tax concessions have been provided to both individuals and businesses in an effort to stimulate investment, reduce the cost of building materials for housing, and to grant businesses waivers of penalties and interest on applicable taxes on condition that they make the payments by the stipulated deadline date. This can be aptly described, Mr. Speaker, as a revolution in fiscal policy that will position the economy on a higher growth trajectory, improve income distribution, increase employment, and reduce poverty. Any response by the opposition to those things are trying to insult the truth of our work and the progress that we are making. But we are not going into election mode prematurely. We are going to continue to govern whilst we continue to explain to the people of this country the measures that we are taking. And this is what is called effective politics, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we understand that no one likes to pay more taxes. This new levy needs to, however, be viewed within the context of the reduction in income taxes given to households, the substantial tax concessions given to households and businesses, and more importantly, the need to provide additional resources for health and security. This is the whole idea. As a matter of fact, everybody with a civic duty will contribute a small amount, but overall, more resources will come into the fiscal framework to allow us to provide for health and security more effectively. Mr. Speaker, we continue to hear the propaganda that the funds raised by the levy will not be used for health and security, as it will be going into a general consolidated fund. Mr. Speaker, we have witnessed a major surge in projects undertaken for both health and citizen security, involving the rehabilitation and building of police stations. And now we are about to start the major phase of the St. Jude's Hospital, one of the major priorities of our government, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the opposition misled and continues to mislead the public on this important project. We are now in the process of not only commencing the construction of the St. Jude Hospital, but also funding has been made available for the rehabilitation of the Judge Odlum Stadium. The provision of this highly concessionary loan from the Saudi Fund for Development has made it possible for us to secure for the very first time, Mr. Speaker, funding for the completion of the St. Jude's Hospital and the rehabilitation of the Judge Odlum Stadium. This is what you call a dose ball, Mr. Speaker. And the opposition does not know what to do, Mr. Speaker. But we are going to remain sober and focus on the cause that will bring the greatest benefits to the people of this country. And now the opposition thinking of the next election campaign as one of misinformation. But we are waiting, Mr. Speaker, and make no mistake, we are going to respond appropriately. Not with misinformation, but with the facts. We hear the opposition, Mr. Speaker, now complaining about our government taking a loan to complete St. Jude Hospital. Can you imagine that? It is clear, Mr. Speaker, that the last administration did not have a clear financing plan to complete the box, that monstrosity, and almost committed to the country to an expensive loan through a design, finance, and construct option for over $70 million to complete the top floor only, and to be repaid in 1 year with interest accruing at the rate of 1% per day for late payments. Mr. Speaker, they would have had to find additional monies to buy all the necessary equipment for the hospital. Mr. Speaker, this desperation, this move by the former administration luckily failed to materialize as the general election was called. The rest, as we say, is history. This arrangement reminds me so much of the failed vaccination deal that the leader of the opposition spearheaded. In that case, we were not so lucky, as the contract was signed and the government had already paid the money to Radical Investments Limited. Unlike the previous administration, Mr. Speaker, our government looks at the most cost-effective methods of financing our projects and programs. I will have an opportunity shortly to debate the resolution on the loan from the Saudi Development Fund. This will be a great day in the chamber, Mr. Speaker. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, I wish to lend my full support to the resolution by the Minister of Finance to approve the amendment of the Health and Citizen Security Levy Order to amend Schedules 1, 2, and 3 of the Health and Citizen Security Levy Act as required by Section 17 of the Act. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I thank members for their support. This resolution.
Honourable members, the question is that Parliament, by affirmative resolution, approves the draft Health and Citizen Security Levy amendment of Schedule 3 order, which amends Schedules 1, 2, and 3 of the Act to A, in the case of Schedule 1, to include the following goods under the following customs tariff. Chapter 27, mineral fuels, mineral oils, and products of the distillation, bituminous substances, mineral waxes. B, in the case of Schedule 2, include maintenance and repair of motor vehicles as a service that requires payment of the Health and Citizen Security Levy. C, in the case of Schedule 3, under paragraph 1, goods, the following goods are exempted as exempted goods, Chapter 88, aircraft, spacecraft, and parts thereof. Chapter 89, ships, boats, and floating structures. Chapter 99, special transactions. B, delete Chapter 27 from list of exempted goods. 2, under paragraph 2, include the following imported goods, customs tariff numbers as exempted goods. 2209.00.00, vinegar and substitutes for vinegar obtained from acetic acid. 2522.10.00, quick lime. 2522.20.00, slaked lime. 2522.30.00, hydraulic. 2523.21.00, white cement. 4014.90.00, other hygienic or pharmaceutical articles, including teats or vulcanized rubber other than hard rubber, with or without fittings of hard rubber. B, to replace the following customs tariff numbers: 2523.10.00, cement clinkers. Replace paragraph 5 to exempt goods pertaining to medical equipment and parts, including the goods specified in that paragraph. 4, replace paragraph 6 to exempt goods pertaining to security and surveillance equipment, including the goods specified in that paragraph. Include as exempted goods: A, all classes of raw materials and packaging materials imported for use in the manufacturing of goods by local manufacturing and certified as such by the ministry responsible for commerce. B, all classes of raw materials and packaging materials imported for use in the agricultural industry and certified as such by the ministry responsible for agriculture. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
They want to do income tax first because they have to check something with their head.
Okay. Bills, but I just wish to advise that notwithstanding the order on the other paper, the income tax amendment bill will be done first. Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to present for first reading a bill shortly entitled Income Tax Amendment.
Income tax amendment.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move for the suspension of the standing order number 48-2 to enable this bill to go through its remaining stages at the sitting.
Honorable members, the question is that standing order 48-2 be suspended in order to allow the Prime Minister and Minister for Finance to proceed with the remaining stages of the bill at this sitting. I now put the question. As many as that opinion say aye. As many as the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leave is granted. Please proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this amendment in income tax.
For the record, Prime Minister, you just place on record the second reading.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move for second reading a bill entitled Income Tax Amendment Act. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this amendment to the Income Tax Act, Mr. Speaker, is actually an amendment to emphasize and to re-emphasize the philosophical position of the government of St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. A philosophical position that puts people first, and a philosophical position that says that there must be opportunity for all, and those who receive less are not unduly disadvantaged, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you may know that any contractor who gets a $10,000 contract with the government, when he goes to the Treasury Department, 10% is deducted from his earnings. So if he gets a legal contract for $5,000 to cut some grass or to clean a drain, when he goes to the Treasury, the government takes $500. So he gets $4,500. And Mr. Speaker, the margins are very small in these small $10,000 jobs. The margins are very small. And contractors complain all the time that even though they get a job, they get nothing from the contract because they are charged 10% by the government before they pay their workers, etc., Mr. Speaker. So we decided, Mr. Speaker, that we would exempt payments of $10,000 and less from the 10% deduction, Mr. Speaker. I mean, this also brings us to line with the deductions made by ordinary employees, because nobody in this country who gets less than $2,000 a month, $24,000 a year, pays any taxes. You pay no income tax, Mr. Speaker. If you get less than $24,000 a year, you don't pay any taxes. And when you add the other allowances, it comes to $25,400. You pay no taxes. So when a contractor who gets 2 contracts for $10,000 per year, he actually pays $2,000 tax. Right? And the ordinary employee who gets the same $24,000 doesn't pay any taxes, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, we fought, and these small contractors, many of them do not get more than 2 contracts per year. for more than $10,000. They don't get it, Mr. Speaker. These contracts are small contracts, $5,000, $6,000, sometimes $3,000. And for $3,000, to take up 10% from it, we get a person $2,700, Mr. Speaker. We thought that was unfair, and this is what this amendment is all about, Mr. Speaker. That doesn't mean that when contractors graduate, they don't have to file their taxes, Mr. Speaker. So all payments, and if that is converted to the private sector, Mr. Speaker, when the private sector gives out a list of people who have been paid for the contracts that they do, Mr. Speaker, the adequate provisions would be made if from the private sector. So if the private sector follows, they must ensure that they send that list to the Inland Revenue so that the appropriate deductions can be made, Mr. Speaker. This is for musicians, for anybody of this nature. If you pay less than $10,000, you have to take out a 10% tax, income tax, and then when you send in the return, the appropriate adjustments are going to be made, Mr. Speaker. So we thought that was a measure to assist the ordinary person who has a little job for $5,000. You take out $500 from it. Sometimes they make nothing on it, Mr. Speaker. But that's a bigger picture. The Ministry of Infrastructure is in the process of preparing a sort of analysis to show what percentage would be labor and what percentage would be materials for jobs, even jobs more than $10,000, but within a particular threshold, Mr. Speaker. So this is again another move by this government, Mr. Speaker, to give people income relief from income tax. $10,000 and below. $10,000, nothing above $10,000. That's the question. The 5,000, and that's a very good question. What will happen to him now is that his records are going to be in revenue. He has to file his return. He has to file. And when he files, then the appropriate adjustment will be made. So, Mr. Speaker, this is what the amendment is all about. To assist small people who get these small contracts without paying taxes in the first instance. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, the question is that the income tax amendment bill be read a second time. The member for Castries Southeast.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this very important bill, a tax amendment to facilitate small contractors. And of course, Mr. Speaker, this is a very important initiative supported by this Parliament, this government, to bring relief to small contractors. And of course, for most of us sitting here, we would be aware of what small contractors, what they go through. In fact, I've heard of so many approaches to making payments to small contractors because of the fact that we have a 10% from the Treasury that is slashed on any contractor who has a matter before the Treasury. The person pays 10%, and of course it's expected that the individual would, through going through the process of filing their returns, would recover. Whereas with small contractors, some of them we know are not in the financial system. Some of our small contractors, they only work at a seasonal time in the year, and they hardly ever surface again, and that has been unfair. Not just the 10%, but you also have retention under certain clauses of contract, where a contractor has a contract, for example, of $8,000. You take 10%, which is $800. That contractor now must pay a retention amount of 5% or 10%. If his 5% is $360, and the person is expected to use $6,840 to pay for materials, to pay laborers, and in most cases they do not measure, but they actually subsidizing government activities. That's what happens. And that has been going on for a long time, and the nature of our people is such that the apathy with the system. They do not trust that the government system works for them. There's very little advocacy for someone to speak on their behalf. The Ministry of Finance, I dare say sometimes the professionals, once they collect the revenue and they do their part, that's their concern with it. But the small individuals are ones suffering dividend. They suffer a lot. The larger contractors with the 1-point-something million contract who are able to claim for exemption, they get the exemption certificate. But if you're a small contractor and you're not in the financial system, you cannot afford or qualify for an exemption certificate. So the 10% and you subsidizing government stays in the treasury, stays in the system, and it is to your disadvantage. So the idea of bringing this relief to small contractors is very important. And sometimes I ask, if somebody's going to cut grass or do a small of cleaning of drain, why a retention? What are you retaining monies for? To see if the grass cut properly? And even when retention of the larger contractors are done, you see no administration of the retention. But small contractors, like we come up with rules and we just apply it across the board to everyone without looking at where there's supposed to be some exception to the rules. So for example, and I'm happy that the PS for Economic Affairs is paying attention, there's an HRDC built in Odsa. And the contractor rolled over the drain, collapsed the drain, the road has been damaged and there's no attention. The retention is supposed to be used to ask the contractor to make good the infrastructure before he's paid everything. But you do not find that. But there's a principle of taking retention. Good contract administration, but bad practice in administering the contracts. But our smaller contractors who do not have that risk associated with they performing the contract, the same is applied. Mr. Speaker, I think the issue of the $10,000 and less is important not just for works contractors or service contractors, but the other persons who provide some kind of service other than construction, and of course have to suffer the same fate. We do not pay attention who they must pay or who is expected to benefit from that $10,000 of the small contracts, but the 10% is taken and they're expected sometimes to pay fuel, pay their mortgage on their with ETAD costs. They're expected to the young man they have pay, I'm working with them to pay the individual, and sometimes you could have bickering in the background and they come to the pal rep and they say la hansala obamela sapa fay ipasi. You understand? But then the goodness of poor struggling people makes for us sometimes they say on lot le quitter sa back misère. You know, the ordinary solutions, quitter sa back misère, leave that alone, whereas the system is not working for them. And I think our professionals within the financial agencies of government must pay attention to the intention of laws. That 10% on contracts was never meant to be placed for all persons who provide services to government. I recall very early on some projects in government as a quantity surveyor telling the Treasury this 10% is hurting the performance of contractors. I remember saying this, but we have allowed it to remain, and now we apply it to people cutting grass, somebody digging a drain for $400. We ask to take 10% from it, and what has happened to avoid that now, we come up with an idea called paymaster, because some departments do not want to process the payments and have so many deductions. We enter into an agreement with someone who has no business in providing the service to pay the individual small amounts. And that is another action that I consider to be dangerous. It is not a good practice to come up with a paymaster to pay individuals who did not render service, so that through that person, other persons could get paid. So, Mr. Speaker, again, this government, and a lot has been said, and I listen to what is being projected on social media, in the news, misleading our people, not speaking the truth. And I ask myself, to what extent we are destroying our people by speaking lies and not representing what is truthful. The intention of this government is to advance the best for our people, especially vulnerable population. And I heard someone said this morning that so much this government has done in this short space of time that they cannot even outline it because there's too many. Every opportunity to provide for ordinary solutions, this government has moved. In fact, we have an agenda that we're going to make it as best as we can for ordinary solutions. And this time we have moved to small contractors, $10,000 and less, and we will continue to investigate what more can be done for ordinary solutions, small businesses, to have an opportunity to survive in this part of St. Lucia. So I really want to thank the Prime Minister and the Cabinet of Ministers and all of us who saw it necessary to contribute for our ordinary St. Lucians in that regard. And I ask St. Lucians to take this initiative and not to stay away from the system of government, but start filing your returns, start developing your construction business. If you're cutting grass, take it serious. You understand? Start putting structures in place so that your business can grow, you can get better. You can move from being a $10,000 contractor to a 20, move from 20 to 50, grow. Because this government is interested in your welfare, is interested in your small business, and we want to support you. And that is why you are not going to be paying that. Treasury will not be slashing your amount by 10%. But we will ensure that you do better, you are able to price your job well, pay your workers well, pay for your inputs as we move together to create a stronger industry, not just for the construction sector, but the other sectors that continue to serve our people. During the carnival, you would have seen our artists performing. Even during elections, I see how quickly the artists produce songs overnight, as if it were coming from a bakery. Hot bread, they come to you and they say, Joachim, when you buy masalaje labao, de mespaje bonnet. And by the time they speak to you, you can hear something, either platate or something coming out. Our artists and our people in their struggles can produce in so many different ways, and we want to be able to support them and let them grow. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The member for Soufrière, Fosséjac.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to add my voice and this afternoon to support this amendment to the Income Tax Act, which is the Income Tax Amendment Act, Mr. Speaker. It might appear to be a very small gesture, but it is something I believe deep in my heart has significant implication for our laborers, our small contractors. When, as a government, we approach the electorate, we made one strong commitment, and that was to put the people first. And as we sit as a cabinet of ministers, we start looking at the various sectors of the economy, how we have attempted to address general consumers, and I'll speak on that a little later on the next bill before us. How we have assisted the business community, how we have assisted areas in education, which was articulated this morning. And today I am extremely pleased that as a member of Parliament and as a member of the Cabinet of Ministers, I want to take this moment to thank the Minister for Finance for taking into consideration the plight of our small contractors and laborers. And you've heard it, persons who would have a contract for $10,000 or less. And when you understand the implication of a 10% deduction on a $10,000 contract. As a parliamentary rep, when you have issued this contract and you have a contractor coming back to the office to say, I did not make any money, so I'm losing money on that particular contract. Because most times, what we have understood is that the costing of these projects sometimes has not been done properly. The costings have not been done properly. So that person having a $10,000 contract and $1,000 is taken away through the tax system, most times ended up with a loss or not gaining anything for themselves, especially if they have to employ other persons to assist them. Most times they have to employ other persons to assist them on these small contracts, and they end up in a loss situation. So when we looked at that situation, I am extremely proud of my cabinet colleagues and parliamentarians today, especially led by our minister, our Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, for taking this bold step to touch the thousands of small contractors around the country. Thousands of contractors around the country. And the minister, the Prime Minister, is correct to say that most times those persons would only receive maybe 1 or 2 of these contracts a year. So in essence, they were at a disadvantage, because when you look at the adjustments that we've made to the Income Tax Act in terms of the threshold before taxes are being paid, they would have been below the $24,000 threshold. And yet we were taking $2,000 from them if they had 2 contracts.
Yeah.
So they were already at a disadvantage. And because they are not part of that system,
That's right.
they do not file and they never get a refund.
That's right.
So we are attempting with this amendment to correct this, to bring it, make it a lot easier and equitable on our small contractors. But I want to take this moment as well to say that there is an opportunity within this program where we see a lot more linkages between the system at the Accountant General Department and the system at the Inland Revenue Department. Because as a government, we know we have gone into DigiGov, and we believe with this networking, persons, because the question was asked earlier by the member opposite, what happens to persons who have 5 or 6 or 7 contracts? I believe that is what he's saying. And whether there is an opportunity for a loophole. But with the linkage between DigiGov, Accountant General, Inland Revenue, this system is going to signal that the system should highlight when somebody has received more than 2 or 3 contracts. And that is where the relative tax returns should address that. So I'm pleased today, as a member of Parliament, when I speak to my farmers and my contractors in Foshejak, in Barons Drive, to say that we heard their plea and we have addressed it. It is extremely important for us as a government that we represent all sectors of our economy. And today we are touching a large variety. I don't think we have the numbers, but I believe we are touching a large amount of persons in the farming community, laborers, unskilled laborers, and today I stand here very pleased, very happy that this administration of the St. Lucia Labour Party is again putting the people of St. Lucia first. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Castries North.
Mr. Speaker, I feel a certain sense of relief this afternoon in supporting the Prime Minister, Minister for Finance, on the presentation of this income tax amendment. Because as was said earlier on, it targets a number of individuals who are engaged in casual labor, casual contractual work, who occasionally are engaged by government to undertake works within our communities. Whether it is cutting of grass, as we often call it, or beautification, unclogging of drains, some say mitigation, or it is construction of retaining walls and other structural elements so as to enhance and protect our environment. Most of those persons, Mr. Speaker, are called upon once they get a contract, secure a contract from the government, are called upon to pay 10%. But it's even more than that, Mr. Speaker. In some instances, an individual who probably is having a social challenge, who is attempting not to rob, but rather to earn some money to help themselves, probably medical assistance, medical attention, they need some money. And they've come forward and we've attempted to assist them. And I recall, Mr. Speaker, on one occasion, and we have several of those instances, where individuals come with those cases. And in one instance, a sickler who needed treatment came to the ministry for assistance in the form of a small contract, as we call it. And so he was given a contract for $1,500. That's what we could have afforded. He needed some money, and so we gave him $1,500. He himself could not have performed the contract because of his health condition. And so he got 3 individuals with weed eaters to assist him. Each of them charging him $250. $250 working for 2 days to do the job. So just do the maths on this. The 1.5 is all over. And then he was called upon, he negotiated, of course, and got them to reduce the price. But by the time he was finished, he came back to me, Mr. Speaker, and said, "Sir, I need another contract because I didn't make any money, I can't pay the bill." So you have that challenge because the departments of government and the officials of government and some institutions are insensitive to the social need. Very insensitive. And wouldn't hear a thing or understand anything except what's written in the law. And so the poor sickler had to accept what he got, and I had to meet the balance. But Mr. Speaker, there are other issues that down the road, this caring government, whose mantra has been putting people first, and I say it in a different way, for people and country. We have to also look at some other instances, some other areas which also affect those casual contractors. You give an individual a contract to do what we call the caretaker program. And some of them don't earn no more than $1,680, maybe $2,000. And he's trying to get that job done because he wants the money, he has to go and do something. It's every other month, maybe we offer those assignments, those works. And he's doing his work, and his weed eater kicks a pebble, damages the windshield of a vehicle, and the owner says, "You have to replace my vehicle. It costs $3,000. So now we have to begin to start thinking of how do we indemnify those individuals. Yes, and probably going down the road for a caring government, we need to now look and see how can we have a kind of national insurance providing indemnity for those small workers. So that once you get a contract with the government, you will be allowed to sign up for the contract and to be indemnified under a particular arrangement without having to put out the kind of money we're talking about. Because this is a real thing. It is a real thing, and it happens all the time. Damage to equipment, damage to vehicles. And so I believe, Mr. Speaker, that what we have done there, which is an experience that we have been having for many years, and no government have come up with a resolution to it. No government. I recall, Mr. Speaker, the day we discussed it in Cabinet, what seemed to have been an exercise to just save a few $100s for a few little people. We spent probably 2.5, if not 3 hours arguing it, clinically debating it in the Cabinet, and trying to find ways and means of solving the problem, not because we are the ones experiencing the problem, but because the people themselves are experiencing the problem. The pain of it, the pain of these little people when they get a little contract of the $1,005, $2,005, and so happy, and then they slap with this 10% of $250, plus they have 1 or 2 other persons depending on them to get that money. That pain, we have brought some level of relief. And I do hope that for those who will now benefit, will understand what it takes for a government to be conscious of their needs and to make a determined effort, no matter what, to ensure that there is resolution to their own problem. But also, Mr. Speaker, in doing so, we need to encourage them. Encourage them, as my colleague early on said, to organize themselves, structure themselves, ensure that they organize themselves into small businesses, get advice, seek advice, and work towards building an organization that we all can be proud of. Too often, Mr. Speaker, our informal sector seem to spend a lot of time doing things, working hard, but not working smart. And we as a government, as you've seen, whether it's the youth economy or through the MSME, all of those programs, what you have seen is an attempt to formalize the informal and to get our people serious, more responsible, and making a positive contribution. So, Mr. Speaker, this short intervention is to state that we heard the people, we listened to the people, and we've responded to the call, a call for relief, a call of justice, a call that we hope will encourage them to work harder and make their contribution to this country. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Library.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise as usual to make a brief intervention to the debate on the Income Tax Amendment Bill. Mr. Speaker, the bill seeks to reduce the requirement for the deduction of tax at source or withholding taxes from the payment of contractors on contracts below $10,000. Section 78 of the Income Tax Act is to be amended to provide this exemption from the deduction. Section 78(1) of the aforementioned Act states as follows, and I quote, Mr. Speaker, "Where any person makes any payment, either directly or indirectly through a financial institution to a contractor for the supply of labor or for the hiring of equipment, that person or the financial institution shall, subject to subsection 3, deduct tax from the gross amount of such payment at the rate of 10%, unquote. This proposed amendment, Mr. Speaker, is in keeping with a commitment made by the Prime Minister during the presentation of the budget for the fiscal period 2023-2024. And in this regard, Mr. Speaker, I quote, Mr. Speaker, effective July 1st, 2023, there will be no withholding tax on payments on contracts $10,000 and below. This exemption will apply to musicians and other artists in the creative industries. We will enact new legislation and tax regimes to facilitate the development of the creative industries, unquote. This requirement, Mr. Speaker, will allow small contractors whose income is less than $25,000 per annum to pay no taxes, and therefore will remove the requirement to make a claim for a refund from the Inland Revenue Department. I know the member for Choiseul asked the question earlier regarding the number of contracts, but I just wish to add to the discourse that when a contractor gets a $10,000 contract, that does not mean that's income, because they have to expend a portion of that, and sometimes, you know, almost all of it. So we have to focus on what is coming to that contractor in terms of income, whether it's the $1,000 or $2,000. It will also provide greater cash flow to those contractors, giving them the flexibility to better manage their financial affairs, Mr. Speaker. This proposal, Mr. Speaker, must be seen within the wider context of the radical income tax reforms and more broader fiscal reforms being undertaken to reduce income taxes for, in particular, the people who are in the lower income bracket, Mr. Speaker. Again, consistent with the philosophy and thinking of a caring government, Mr. Speaker. At the end of the day, the security levy, in the context of the massive breaks, the people are better off, Mr. Speaker. They are better off. There was a slogan in Barbados many years ago, an election slogan that says, "Ease the squeeze." And I have always referred to the member for Castries East and the Prime Minister and Minister for Finance as a magician. And I think it was my colleague minister from Babuno who said, "She ain't knowing where the money coming from." We are still recovering from that massive COVID shock. But yet still, we are able to do things that the former government could not do in the sunshine without those shocks. It is because our emphasis is on the people of this country, Mr. Speaker. Make no mistake about it. And the people understand how their lives are being touched. They understand that. But that's one other show. From January 1st, 2023, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister and Minister for Finance increased the personal income tax allowance from $18,000 to $25,000. This means that people who earn up to $2,083 monthly will no longer be required to pay taxes. As a result, Mr. Speaker, approximately 15,000 people are no longer required to pay income taxes. The Prime Minister and Minister for Finance and member for Castries is Ipafwet, Mr. Speaker. Ipafwet. In this budgetary policy statement, the Prime Minister and Minister for Finance granted a 100% waiver on penalties, interest, and fines for businesses and individuals on the following categories of taxes if the applicable taxes are paid by May 1st, 2024. Hotel accommodation tax, pay as you earn, hotel accommodation taxes, all inclusives, other withholding tax, and value-added tax. Mr. Speaker, our government has also accelerated the payment of refunds. You know, refunds that used to be in the holding pattern indefinitely, they are leaving the holding pattern. And there is a greater responsiveness to the needs of the people, Mr. Speaker. That you pay, that's right, you pay, and then you're waiting for your refund. But when you owe, it's taken promptly. Mr. Speaker, we are trying to, in very difficult circumstances, we are yet to get to pre-COVID levels. And we are regrouping, and we are assisting the overall recovery of the economy so that we can do more for the people of this country. And we're not repairing the economy for people now to come and assume power and squander those monies on Papi Show, you know. We are repairing the economy. We are doing what we can at this juncture. And then, in the next term, we are going to do even more because the economy would be in a better condition. Mr. Speaker, the cumulative impact of these policies increases the disposable income of the people and provides some relief to the increase in the cost of living. Let's not forget that. We are creating an improved framework for people to exist in this country. Provide some relief to the increase in the cost of living over which we have no control. We have no control over those things. Mr. Speaker, even when we used to export bananas to the UK, we didn't control the price, they controlled the price. And when their imports are coming to our country, we don't control the price, they control the price. That is because we are a small, open, and vulnerable economy. The price of fuel going up everywhere, transportation costs, out of control. How can that be our fault? But we have been subsidizing cooking gas and all kinds of things to help cushion the impact of those external shocks on the people of this country. Mr. Speaker, given what I have said, I am in full support of the Income Tax Amendment Bill as it is part of the broader fiscal package of relief measures to provide greater support to the people of St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. We are putting our national house in order to benefit the nationals of our country. Can we do everything in 2 years? Absolutely not. And I end with the words of the late President of the United States of America, J.F. Kennedy, who said, and I quote, "Let us not curse the remaining dark. Let us continue to gather the light," unquote. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, just to add something to what the Minister for Infrastructure said, Mr. Speaker, the calculation on the breakdown between materials and labor, when that's done, Mr. Speaker, when we can apportion of what percentage is labor and what percentage is materials, Mr. Speaker, the tax will only have to be paid on the labor and not the materials. That's in the future, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I thank members for the support, Mr. Speaker. Again, as members said, it's another move by the government to put more money in the pockets of the people of this country, Mr. Speaker. And think about how this works. Just envisage yourself how this works, Mr. Speaker. Remove the VAT on building materials, Mr. Speaker. So the person who doesn't eat plywood, but who wants to buy a few sheets of plywood and galvanize. Mr. Speaker, and somebody sent me a little calculation, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, what keeps me going is the support from the ground, Mr. Speaker, the support from the masses, the support from the people who don't have time or whose the government hasn't given their children a computer yet, who don't have time to go on social media, Mr. Speaker, and spew lies and misinformation, Mr. Speaker. Here is what the person said to me. They said, listen to me. When, as you and the government has removed VAT on plywood, you know what happens? When I buy 5 sheets of plywood, with the remainder, with what you've taken out of the VAT, I can buy an extra sheet. Is that logic, Mr. Speaker? That's how the people on the ground calculate. People who feel it. When they buy 5 sheets of plywood, with the rebate on plywood, they can buy an extra sheet, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you know, when they make these cast these aspersions, he who feels it most knows it, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you don't know what 5 sheets of plywood does for an ordinary man and woman. 5 sheets of plywood for the flooring. We wish it could be a lot more, you know. But you don't know the impact that 5 sheets of plywood, 5 new sheets of plywood have, Mr. Speaker, for the ordinary man and woman, the low income, the person whose income is not what it ought to be, Mr. Speaker, because of various factors. You don't know what it means, Mr. Speaker? It means a lot. It means a lot, Mr. Speaker. But they don't understand it. They can't understand it. Galvanized, Mr. Speaker. The hurricane season is on. And the number of people who have issues with their roofs leaking, Mr. Speaker. 10 sheets of galvanized. And you save the VAT on that, Mr. Speaker. 10 sheets convert into 11 or 12 by saving the VAT in it, Mr. Speaker. And now you add in that to the 10% which you're removing from income tax of a small contractor. You see how the combination works, Mr. Speaker? So that small contractor who would have had a contract for $5,000 if he does it himself, instead of getting $4,500, he'll get $5,000. So this $500 he can buy 2 sheets of plywood. See how it works? How it gets together? And then, Mr. Speaker, to add to it, when his child goes to school, in Form 1, they get a computer. On top of that, and then they still get $500 to go to school, Mr. Speaker. You see what the government is doing? And then, Mr. Speaker, the mother has to pay no facility fees. So you see, Mr. Speaker, how this government, and that's why they have to be so angry. Because you see how it works out, Mr. Speaker? Now, translate that, you take it out now, translate it, Mr. Speaker, to a member of the St. Lucia Police Force, a constable. He's paying no tax on his first $24,000 per year. On his first $2,000, he's paying no tax, right? Then, Mr. Speaker, he now has the opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to stop paying facility fees. So he hasn't paid that. The money he was saving to pay CXC for his children, he's not going to pay for maths and English. So he saved something else, Mr. Speaker. Then the computer he has to buy for his child, he hasn't got to buy it again, Mr. Speaker, because the government is giving him the computer. And if his child excels, the child might get a scholarship. So you see, Mr. Speaker, everybody. So this government benefits everyone. Everyone the government benefits from, Mr. Speaker. And right now, Mr. Speaker, don't really St. Lucia. So, Mr. Speaker, right now, Mr. Speaker, they are listening on Radio St. Lucia. You see? 97.3, Mr. Speaker, Radio St. Lucia. So you see, Mr. Speaker, how the government, how this government is coming to place. So you can see the anger, Mr. Speaker, and to make it even better, Mr. Speaker, when they're in the south, they'll be able to go to a new St. Jude hospital. So you see the anger? See why they must be angry, Mr. Speaker? But we're moving on, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I thank members for the support, and then I look forward when the Senate meets, Mr. Speaker, for the people of this country, when they go to the Treasury to collect the entire check instead of taking 10% if the check is less than $10,000. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, the question is that the income tax amendment bill be read a second time. And now put the question, as many as that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
An act to amend the Income Tax Act Cap 15.02.
Clause 2.
Amendment of Section 78.
Clause 2 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 1.
Short title.
Clause 1 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Honourable members, the question is that the committee rises and the bill be reported. I now put the question, as many as of that opinion say aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honourable members, I beg to report that the Income Tax Amendment Bill went through committee stage without amendments. Prime Minister.
Report of the committee be accepted and the bill be read a third time and passed.
Honourable members, the question is that the report of the committee be adopted and that the Income Tax Amendment Bill be read a third time and passed. I now put the question, as many as of that opinion say aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Be it enacted by the King's Most Excellent Majesty, by and with the advice and consent of the House of Assembly and the Senate of St. Lucia, and by the authority of the same as follows. This act may be cited as the Income Tax Amendment Act 2023.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move a first reading of a bill entitled Health and Citizen Security Levy Amendment Act. And Mr. Speaker, just allow me 2 seconds, Mr. Speaker. That will have no impact because the date for the Health and Security Levy on services has been pushed back to October. So there's no impact.
Health and Citizen Security Levy Amendment.
Mr. Speaker, I move that this bill be read at the next or subsequent sitting of the Honourable House.
You're still on, Prime Minister. Move for the adjournment.
I move that this Honourable House stand adjourned, sine die.
Honourable members, the question is that this House do stand adjourned sine die. I now put the question, as many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Sitting adjourned.
All right.
Eh bien, nous venons au bout de session qui est constituée aujourd'hui. Aujourd'hui, nous une discussion sur 3 motions que le gouvernement. Ces 3 motions, c'était pour mettre l'argent en consolidé, c'est l'argent du gouvernement, mais pour servir l'argent, ça là, pour le gouvernement, ça a dépensé particulièrement à ce les affaires de l'école, puisque quand nous étions ministre de l'éducation, expliquait que l'achat de l'école était dommagé par ça c'est tropical storm, tropical, le mauvais temps Brett qui était passé des mois passés avec il dommagé sinon pour un ministre d'éducation il vendait l'école qui est affectée avec il a besoin de l'argent ça là comme dit c'est normal sous vacances pour ça manger c'est l'école là bien vite avec pour l'école ouverte ça c'est en septembre.
Yeah.
Virgin?
Yes. And the other debates we saw, the other much discussion that took place, it centered not only on the motion to transfer funds from the consolidated fund, as my colleague said, to the rehabilitation of schools destroyed by Brett, but there was discussion on an income tax amendment, and basically this amendment made allowance for small contractors and laborers who are earning $10,000 or less, that they would be exempted from paying any income tax. This also goes hand in hand with a decision earlier on where the government had also exempted anyone who was earning $2,000 or less per month, that they too would be exempted. And so there was discussion. Most of the ministers, they praised it, saying that it would actually put money back in the hands of small contractors who had many problems in paying laborers and also buying equipment, and they were saying most times they themselves had to take money from their own pocket to continue the work of government. And yes, Michael, there was another resolution.
L'autre résolution quand le gouvernement il était passé en loi, c'est jour passé qu'a gardé les affaires en taxe avec appelé VAT. Le gouvernement a tiré VAT sur certains marchandises, mais comme tant qu'à aller, le gouvernement a découvert l'année plus marchandises avec des bagages qui méritaient changement. C'est Brésil qui fait venir en quelque sorte pour mettre plus ces bagages qui a sur VAT. Et quand l'autre point que le Premier ministre a mentionné, et qui est important, qui est que écouter ça à la radio, avec un monde fait pour ça là qui en charge ces gens business là qui a dit qu'il n'y a pas ça tiré VAT puisque marchandises là il était jamais pour finir vendre. Alors il a acheté à prix VAT, c'est il a continué à vendre, il a vendu à même prix avant VAT. Le Premier ministre fait pour aujourd'hui qui et je vais dire que l'esprit parce que c'est important pour moi ça. Le Premier ministre a dit il y a jamais un arrangement et puis ces gens business qui ça l'argent dépense le payer depuis ni plus il y a joindre l'argent. Ça veut dire ça fait pour dire qu'il pas ni VAT. Si vous payez plus, il dit il y a joindre l'argent il so vendre bagarre là à prix. Ça ma ça vous comprenez ça et ça important parce qu'il y a chez ces gens business et puis quand même ça crier à ces gens business pour travail il fait un appel pour ces gens business travail et puis gouvernement pour faire bagarre la marché.
Absolutely. So just to highlight that point, I mean, in English, you are saying that some people were complaining that the prices of the goods are going, even with the zero-rated VAT commodities.
Exactly, because the business, the merchants is saying that they still have stock,
okay,
which they purchased at VAT price.
And the Prime Minister is making an appeal that it should still be zero-rated, and whatever is lost, the government will compensate. Okay, so we've come to the end of another.
Avant de finir, nous lui pour dire, on finir, mais nous lui pour dire, Premier ministre dit que, enfin, il a annoncé, madame lui a annoncé, mais moun qui a écouté nous à sur radio Saint-Lucie. Nous bien contents pour ça. Ça c'est un gros développement puisque un cher monde qui peut-être en commencer avec péché, l'année un monde qui a voyagé à sous machine, l'année plus un monde qui a un jardin, un cher monde qui est teacher qui en l'école là, et même différents monde qui peut-être pas ça rester devant la télévision et garder ça coûté à ce radio avec radio Saint-Lucie viré à ce 97, ça c'est soit 97.3. C'est là où ça journée avec il y a clair. Moi-même j'ai écouté.
Okay, and I suppose we'll be hearing a lot more about the reopening of Radio St. Lucia in the weeks to come. So there we have it, the end of the third sitting of the 12th Parliament of St. Lucia, where the motion, one of the most substantive motions to transfer approximately $5.4 million from the Consolidated Fund for the renovation and rehabilitation of schools that were destroyed by Hurricane Brett. And the other substantive motion, of course, was the exemption of the payment of income tax for small contractors and laborers receiving contracts of $10,000 and less.
Ok, merci un peu Saint-Lucie pour rester pour nous. Tout le monde qui a regardé, qui c'est en Saint-Lucie, dehors Saint-Lucie, n'importe côté où il y a, nous bien contents qui regarder ça qui a passé en Caïconsite. Avec nous, qui invité l'autre pour rester pour nous, enfin, pour brancher pour nous. Et qu'après, on a tenu à cette télévision et radio. Alors, nous, Roger Leonti, et puis c'est technicien qui a travaillé ici, l'année McLean Rémy, et puis Vibert Rameau, et puis Maze Davinelli, et tous les autres qui travaillent. Nous avons dit merci un peu, et nous avons mener en studio nous à présent.